The universe operates on principles we understand: physics, chemistry, the fundamental laws of cause and effect. Starfleet has catalogued thousands of spatial phenomena, charted nebulae and anomalies, mapped the quantum variations in subspace topology across known space. But what happens when something defies every sensor, every theory, every rational explanation? What happens when an entire warship, larger than any vessel the Federation has ever constructed, tears through the fabric of reality itself and brings with it a version of humanity that Starfleet barely recognizes? Deep Space Nine's operations center hummed with its usual controlled chaos. The station orbited Bajorans like a sentinel, its docking pylons extended toward the wormhole that connected the Alpha Quadrant to the distant Gamma Quadrant, and to the Dominion threat that had plunged the Federation into the bloodiest conflict in its history. Captain Benjamin Sisko stood on the upper level of ops, reviewing casualty reports from the latest engagement near the Chintoka system. The war was grinding forward, measured in destroyed ships and lost lives. "Captain," Major Kira Nerys called from her station, her Bajoran accent sharp with urgency. "I'm reading a massive subspace distortion bearing 173 Mark II. Distance, 40,000 kilometers and closing." Sisko's jaw tightened. "Dominion reinforcements, most likely. Red alert. Raise shields. Helm, position us between the anomaly and Bajorans." The station's klaxons blared as crew members rushed to battle stations. Chief O'Brien's fingers flew across his engineering console, rerouting power to weapons and defensive systems. Lieutenant Commander Dax's spots darkened with concentration as her science station lit up with cascading alerts. "Benjamin," Dax said, her voice carrying that peculiar mix of concern and scientific fascination that 3 centuries of Trill lifetimes produced. "This isn't a Dominion wormhole signature. The subspace fracture is wrong. It's not opening space, it's tearing it." On the main view screen, space itself began to crack. Not the elegant spiral of the Bajoran wormhole or the controlled breach of a transwarp conduit, but a violent rupture that bled colors that shouldn't exist. Energy discharged in lightning fork patterns, and the fabric of reality screamed in frequencies that made the station's structural integrity fields whine in sympathetic resonance. Then something emerged. It was a ship, that much was certain, but its scale defied immediate comprehension. The vessel that pushed through the dimensional tear was a Titan, a geometric brutalist construction of gray-white armor plating and angular weapons emplacements. It dwarfed everything in local space. DS-9 itself, already massive at 1 kilometer in diameter, looked like a child's toy beside this newcomer. The ship's forward section alone was larger than a Galaxy-class starship. "Mother of the Prophets," Kira whispered. O'Brien's console erupted with warnings. "Captain, that thing is nearly 6 kilometers long. Mass readings are off the scale, it's putting gravitational stress on the station's position-keeping thrusters." "Hail them," Sisko ordered, descending to the command level. His hand instinctively moved toward the phaser hidden beneath his uniform jacket. "All frequencies." Dax worked her controls, then shook her head. "They're not responding to standard hailing frequencies." "Wait, I'm detecting power fluctuations across their hull. They're scanning us. Their sensor technology is aggressive. It's like being painted by a targeting system." The massive ship completed its emergence, and the dimensional tear collapsed behind it with a thunderclap of released energy that sent ripples through DS-9's shields. For a moment, everything went silent. The newcomer hung in space, running lights illuminating rows upon rows of what could only be weapon ports. Hangars gaped in its flanks, easily large enough to hold squadrons of attack craft. Sisko studied the vessel's lines. There was something almost familiar about its design philosophy, human in origin, perhaps, but aggressive in a way that Federation vessels never were. Every curve optimized for warfare, every surface designed to absorb or deflect incoming fire. This wasn't a ship built for exploration or scientific research. This was a warship, pure and unapologetic. "I'm receiving a transmission," Dax announced. "Audio only." "It's English, Benjamin." Old Earth English. On speakers. Static crackled, then resolved into a male voice, clipped and professional with an accent that sounded vaguely North American. Unknown station, this is Captain Thomas Lasky, commanding officer of the United Nations Space Command vessel Infinity, registry INF-101. We've experienced a catastrophic slipspace drive failure and require immediate spatial coordinates and situational assessment. Please identify yourself and your government affiliation. United Nations Space Command. The words hung in ops like a ghost from Earth's past. The UN had been absorbed into the Federation over 2 centuries ago. Sisko exchanged glances with Kira. This is Captain Benjamin Sisko of Deep Space Nine, a United Federation of Planets station. Captain Lasky, you're currently in the Bajoran sector of the Alpha Quadrant. The United Nations Space Command hasn't existed since the 22nd century. What's your point of origin? A pause. Longer than communication lag would justify. When Lasky's voice returned, it carried a new tension. Captain Sisko, our records indicate we departed Earth on stardate November 17, 2558. We were conducting operations in the Epsilon Eridani system when our slipspace drive experienced a critical malfunction. Are you claiming we've traveled through time? Dax's eyes widened. Benjamin, if their calendar is accurate, they're claiming to be from over 400 years in our future. But their technology reads as contemporary, maybe even slightly less advanced in some areas. Or, O'Brien interjected grimly, they're from somewhere else entirely. Parallel dimension, alternate timeline, we've seen it before. On the view screen, the Infinity began a slow rotation, presenting its broadside. Dax's sensors chimed urgently. They're charging weapons. I count at least 40 major gun emplacements and hundreds of point defense systems. Benjamin, those aren't phaser arrays, they're launching slugs. Kinetic projectiles accelerated to relativistic velocities. Sisko's command training kicked in. Kinetic weapons meant different tactical considerations. No beam diffusion, no frequency modulation, just raw mass traveling at percentages of light speed. Their shields could handle it, but the force of impact would be tremendous. Open a channel. Captain Lasky, stand down your weapons. We mean you no harm. You've clearly been through a traumatic experience. Let us help you. Captain Sisko, Lasky replied, with respect, we've been at war for 30 years with an alien coalition that glassed half our worlds before we fought them to a standstill. We've encountered exactly one friendly alien species in that entire time. Our tactical doctrine is very clear about unknown contacts in crisis situations. We will stand down our weapons when we've confirmed you're not a threat. Until then, Infinity maintains a defensive posture. Kira leaned toward Sisko. He's not bluffing. Look at that ship, it's a fortress. They've been fighting for survival. 30 years of war. Glassed worlds. Sisko thought of the Dominion conflict, now in its 2nd year, and how it had already pushed the Federation to compromise principles they'd held for centuries. What would 30 years do to a civilization? Captain Lasky, I'm going to lower our shields as a gesture of good faith, Sisko said, ignoring O'Brien's alarmed expression. We have medical facilities, supplies, and information that might help you understand what's happened. I'm inviting you and your senior staff to the station for face-to-face discussions. The Federation has protocols for first contact situations, even unusual ones like this. Another pause. Sisko could almost hear the debate happening on Infinity's bridge. Accepted, Captain Sisko. But I'm not bringing my senior staff. I'm sending someone else. Master Chief Petty Officer John 117, our best soldier. If this is a trap, he'll survive long enough to warn Infinity. If it's genuine, he'll report back. Either way, we'll know what we're dealing with. Lasky out. The channel closed. Dax looked up from her console, her expression troubled. They're launching a small craft, atmospheric-capable dropship, heavily armored. It's heading for docking port 7. O'Brien shook his head. 30 years of war, and his first move is to send a soldier instead of a diplomat. What kind of humanity did we just meet? Sisko watched the Infinity's weapons remain locked in their ready positions, tracking arcs calculated to cover every approach vector to the massive ship. In the vessel's shadow, Deep Space Nine suddenly felt very small. The kind, Sisko said quietly, that's forgotten what peace looks like. Major Kira, assemble a security detail at docking port 7. Non-lethal weapons only. Chief, I want full internal sensors active. I need to know exactly what we're dealing with when this Master Chief comes aboard. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Trek universe, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. Live long and prosper. As the UNSC dropship approached the station, Sisko couldn't shake the feeling that the war with the Dominion had just become far more complicated. The Federation prided itself on bringing divided peoples together, on showing that cooperation trumped conflict. But what happened when you met a version of humanity that had been forged in a crucible so hot it burned away everything except the will to survive? The docking clamps engaged with a metallic thud that resonated through the station's superstructure. On the other side of that airlock was a soldier from a future that never happened, carrying weapons from a war Starfleet had never fought, representing a human military that should have been dissolved 200 years ago. Sisko straightened his uniform and headed for the turbolift. First contact protocols were about to be tested in ways Starfleet Academy had never anticipated. The Pelican dropship settled onto docking port 7's landing pad with the heavy finality of a vehicle built for war zones rather than diplomatic missions. Its angular armor plating was scarred with carbon scoring and micrometeorite impacts, evidence of combat that made Starfleet's pristine vessels look almost decorative by comparison. The craft's name was stenciled across its hull in faded white letters, Echo 419 Memorial. A tribute to something lost. Captain Sisko stood in the docking bay observation room with Major Kira, Chief O'Brien, and 4 security officers armed with phaser rifles set to heavy stun. Through the transparent aluminum viewport, they watched the dropship's rear hatch hiss open with a hydraulic groan that spoke of purely mechanical systems, no elegant force fields or transporter buffers, just metal, pistons, and pressure seals. For a moment, nothing emerged. Then a figure stepped into the harsh lighting of the docking bay, and every person in the observation room involuntarily tensed. The soldier was massive, over 7 feet tall in armor that looked like it could survive re-entry. The Mjolnir-powered assault armor was a seamless integration of form and function, forest green plates overlaid with additional plating in charcoal gray, every surface covered in tactical attachments, ammunition pouches, and hardpoints for equipment. The helmet was the most striking element, a golden-orange visor that reflected the bay's lights, completely obscuring any hint of the human face beneath. No eyes, no expression, just a mirror that reflected the observer's own uncertainty back at them. In the soldier's hands, hands that seemed too large to be entirely human, rested a rifle that combined brutal simplicity with obvious lethality. The MA-5D assault rifle's barrel tracked with professional precision as the Master Chief scanned the docking bay, cataloging threat vectors with movements too smooth and controlled to be entirely natural. "Saints preserve us," O'Brien breathed. "That's not just armor, that's a walking weapons platform." Kira's hand moved instinctively toward her phaser. "Captain, regulations specify that visitors surrender weapons before boarding the station." Regulations, Sisko said quietly, were written for situations where we had the tactical advantage. "Look at him, Major. Does he look like someone who's going to hand over his weapons because we asked politely?" The Master Chief's helmet turned toward the observation window, toward them specifically, despite the viewport being one-way transparent. The soldier stood perfectly still, a statue of military readiness, and somehow Sisko knew those hidden eyes were counting personnel, calculating response times, mapping exit routes. This wasn't a man. This was a weapon that happened to be shaped like one. Sisko activated the bay's communication system. "Master Chief Petty Officer John 117, I'm Captain Benjamin Sisko. Welcome to Deep Space Nine. If you'll follow the indicated pathway, we can conduct this meeting in a more comfortable environment. The chief's response came through external speakers built into the armor, his voice processed through filters that stripped away warmth and inflection, leaving only stark clarity. Captain Sisko. I need to conduct a security sweep before proceeding further. Standard UNSC protocol for uncertain contact scenarios. I'm afraid I can't authorize that, Sisko replied, keeping his tone diplomatic but firm. You're aboard a Federation starbase with 1,700 civilian residents and personnel. Allowing an armed foreign national to conduct unsupervised reconnaissance would be problematic. The chief remained motionless for 3 seconds, long enough for Sisko to wonder if he was communicating with his ship via encrypted channels. Then the soldier lowered his rifle to a ready carry position and gestured toward the corridor entrance. Understood. Lead the way. As they descended to the docking level and the airlock cycled open, Sisko got his first unfiltered impression of the Master Chief in person. The armor's servos whispered with each movement, barely audible, precisely calibrated mechanical muscles that amplified human motion into something beyond baseline capability. The chief moved with economic efficiency, wasting no energy, each footfall calculated to maintain balance and readiness. Kira and the security detail formed a loose perimeter, not threatening, but present. Professional warriors recognizing another of their kind. Your ship, Sisko began as they walked toward the turbolift. Captain Lasky mentioned you've been at war for 30 years. With the Covenant, he said. Correct. The chief's responses were spare, almost abbreviated. A man trained to communicate essential information without elaboration. We've been at war ourselves, Sisko continued, leading them into the turbolift. Operations level. The lift began its ascent with a characteristic hum. The Dominion, a coalition from the Gamma Quadrant, invaded 2 years ago. They're led by shapeshifters called the Founders who view solid humanoids as inherently inferior. For the first time, the chief's helmet turned fully toward Sisko. Shapeshifters? Yes. They can assume any form, humanoid, object, even liquid states. They're nearly impossible to detect without blood screening. Sisko watched for a reaction, but the mirrored visor revealed nothing. I mention this because trust is complicated in wartime. I'm sure you understand. I do. The chief's hand remained near his rifle's trigger guard, not aggressive, but ready. The Covenant spent 3 decades trying to exterminate humanity because their religion declared us heretics. Toward the end, we allied with some of their species against the others. War makes everything complicated. The turbolift doors opened onto ops, and the sudden exposure to the station's nerve center prompted an immediate response from the chief. His helmet swiveled in a practiced pattern, high corners first, then primary stations, exits, and weapon placements. Dax's science station, O'Brien's engineering console, the Defiant's docking status display, every screen, every terminal catalogued in seconds. Lieutenant Commander Dax stood from her station, her trill spots catching the light as she approached with the confident curiosity of someone who'd lived 300 years across 8 lifetimes. Welcome aboard. I'm Jadzia Dax, Science Officer. Your armor's energy signature is fascinating. It's generating a field similar to our deflector shields but operating on completely different principles. The chief's visor focused on her. Mjolnir-powered assault armor, Generation 3. Energy shielding based on reverse-engineered Covenant technology. You're reading the shield capacitors. And underneath? Dax's scientific interest was genuine, unthreatened. Your biological readings are enhanced. Significantly beyond human baseline. A pause. Longer than necessary for a simple answer. When the chief finally spoke, his voice carried the faintest edge of something that might have been resignation. Spartan 2 Augmentation Program. Carbide ceramic ossification, catalytic thyroid implants, muscular enhancement injections, occipital capillary reversal. Begun at age 14. Survival rate was approximately 50%. The casual delivery of that final statistic made the room go cold. 50%. Children subjected to augmentations that killed half of them. O'Brien's face had gone pale. 14 years old. They did this to children. We volunteered. The chief's tone didn't change, but something in his posture shifted, minutely, defensively. The Covenant was glassing planets. Billions dead. We were humanity's best chance for survival. Kira stepped forward, her Bajoran spirituality and resistance fighter background colliding in her expression. I fought the Cardassians during the occupation. I've done things I'm not proud of in the name of survival. But children. Major. Sisko's voice cut through the rising tension. This wasn't the time for moral judgment. Not when they still didn't understand the full situation. Chief, you mentioned your ship experienced a slipspace drive failure. Do you have any theory about what brought you here? The Master Chief's helmet turned toward the main view screen, where the Infinity hung in space like a dormant titan. No. Roland, our ship's AI, detected a spatial anomaly during our emergency jump. We attempted to abort, but the drive had already engaged. When we emerged. He gestured toward DS9, toward the wormhole visible in the distance. This. Different stars. Different quantum signatures in local space. No UNSC comm traffic on any frequency. AI. Dax's interest sharpened. Your ship has an artificial intelligence. All UNSC vessels above frigate class carry smart AIs. They're essential for navigation, tactical coordination, and slipspace calculations. The chief's hand moved unconsciously to a data port on his helmet, a gesture that spoke of long familiarity. I've worked with AIs before. They're partners. Sisko caught the hesitation, the ghost of something personal in that statement. Before he could pursue it, Kira's console chimed urgently. Captain, 3 Jem'Hadar attack ships just emerged from the wormhole. They're on an intercept course, directly toward the Infinity. The chief's rifle came up instantly, and every security officer in ops drew their phasers in response. The room balanced on the edge of violence for one frozen moment. Stand down. Sisko barked. Chief, lower your weapon. Now. The Master Chief didn't move. His helmet tracked from the view screen to the security officers, calculating odds that any baseline human would have dismissed as impossible. 1 soldier against 8 armed personnel in an unfamiliar environment. Captain, the chief said, his voice absolutely level, hostile ships are approaching my vessel. I need to return to Infinity immediately. Those ships, Sisko said carefully, maintaining eye contact with the reflective visor, belong to the Dominion, the enemy I mentioned. They're likely investigating the spatial distortion your arrival caused. Chief, if you return to your ship and it opens fire, this situation escalates into a battle that could destroy this station and every civilian on it. I need you to trust me. Please. The silence stretched. Somewhere in ops, a console beeped a proximity warning. The Jem'Hadar ships were closing fast, their Polaron weapons already charging. Finally, the Master Chief lowered his rifle. What do you need me to do? Sisko felt something release in his chest. Let me handle the diplomacy. But be ready, the Jem'Hadar don't negotiate well. He turned to the view screen. Hail the Jem'Hadar vessels. The image that appeared on screen was exactly what Sisko expected, a first, heavily armored in Dominion combat gear, his face bearing the distinctive ridges of his species. Behind him, Jem'Hadar soldiers moved with predatory efficiency. Federation Station, the first growled, you harbor an unknown vessel in direct proximity to the Celestial Temple. By order of the Dominion, that ship will be seized and its crew interrogated. Comply, or be destroyed. Before Sisko could respond, the Master Chief moved to the view screen, positioning himself in full view of the Jem'Hadar. At his full height, armored and armed, he was an imposing presence even through subspace transmission. This is Master Chief Petty Officer John 117 of the UNSC Infinity. We're not surrendering. We're not being seized. And if you attack, you'll learn exactly why humanity survived 30 years of genocidal war. The first's eyes widened, not with fear, but with something far more dangerous. Recognition of a challenge. Respect for a warrior. Then you will die with honor, human. Victory is life. The transmission cut. On sensors, the Jem'Hadar ships accelerated to attack speed, phased polaron beams already glowing at their forward arrays. And on the view screen, the UNSC Infinity's weapon ports blazed to life like a constellation of furious stars. The first Mach round left the Infinity's primary coil gun at 4% the speed of light. A 600-ton tungsten carbide slug accelerated through electromagnetic rails that stretched the length of 3 football fields. It crossed the 40,000 kilometers between the supercarrier and the lead Jem'Hadar attack ship in less than 2 seconds. The Jem'Hadar's shields, designed to dissipate directed energy weapons through frequency modulation and power dispersion, encountered something their Vorta engineers had never anticipated: pure kinetic force delivering the energy equivalent of a small nuclear warhead concentrated into a projectile the size of a cargo container. The polaron beam arrays flashed once, brilliantly, as the ship tried to fire. Then the Mach round punched through the forward shields like they weren't there, cored through the vessel's entire length, and exited through the aft section in a spray of molten debris. The Jem'Hadar ship folded inward, its structural integrity catastrophically compromised, and detonated in a white-hot fireball that painted the view screen with blinding light. Chief O'Brien's console erupted in alarms. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, one shot. One bloody shot and they vaporized a Jem'Hadar warship. The remaining 2 attack ships broke formation, their battlefield adaptability protocols kicking in. These weren't raw recruits, these were Jem'Hadar who'd survived dozens of engagements against Federation, Klingon, and Romulan forces. They spiraled in a complex evasive pattern, bringing their aft weapons to bear while maintaining maximum thrust away from the Infinity. It didn't matter. The Infinity's point defense grid came alive. Hundreds of smaller coil guns, M910 Rampart defense systems designed to intercept incoming Covenant plasma torpedoes, tracked the fleeing Jem'Hadar ships with computer-assisted precision. The defensive guns fired in staggered volleys, creating a wall of hypersonic projectiles that no amount of maneuvering could evade. The second Jem'Hadar ship staggered as dozens of kinetic penetrators slammed into its hull, overwhelming shields through sheer volume of fire. Armor plating cracked, atmosphere vented, and critical systems failed in cascading sequence. The ship's warp core breached, adding another expanding sphere of destruction to the battlefield. The third ship's commander made the only rational choice. He activated the phasing cloak and attempted to retreat at maximum warp. From the Infinity's dorsal surface, a weapon system that had remained dormant suddenly powered up. Dax's sensors registered an energy spike unlike anything in Federation databases, not antimatter, not plasma, but something that read as focused particle streams accelerated through impossible geometries. "That's Forerunner technology," the Master Chief said quietly, his helmet fixed on the view screen. "Energy projector. They reverse-engineered it after the war." A lance of golden-white energy reached across space like the finger of an angry god. It caught the cloaked Jem'Hadar ship mid-warp, and the advanced alien technology that had allowed the Covenant to nearly exterminate humanity tore through shields, armor, and subspace field geometry with equal contempt. The ship materialized for a fraction of a second, burning, dying, before its antimatter containment failed and it ceased to exist entirely. Silence filled ops. Even the normal background hum of the station's systems seemed muted, as if DS9 itself was holding its breath. Lieutenant Commander Dax was the first to speak, her voice carrying the analytical detachment of a scientist confronted with revolutionary data. "Benjamin, those weapons operate on principles we don't understand. The kinetic rounds bypassed shield harmonics entirely. And that energy projector, it tracked a cloaked ship through warp. That shouldn't be possible." "Tell that to the Jem'Hadar," O'Brien muttered, his engineering mind already working through implications. 3 ships. Less than 30 seconds. No contest. Kira's tactical display showed new contacts emerging from the wormhole, more Jem'Hadar, responding to the distress call their dying comrades had managed to transmit. 6 attack ships this time, moving in coordinated attack formation. Behind them, the sensor ghost of something larger, a Dominion battlecruiser. Sisko's command chair suddenly felt inadequate for the decisions now required. The Jem'Hadar couldn't stop. Their genetic programming made retreat without Vorta authorization literally impossible. They would attack until destroyed or victorious. And the Infinity had just demonstrated the capacity to obliterate Dominion forces with contemptuous ease. "Chief," Sisko said, turning to the armored Spartan, "I need to speak with Captain Lasky." Immediately. The Master Chief's hand moved to his helmet, fingers pressing controls integrated into the armor's neural interface. "Lasky, this is Chief. Put me through to Captain Sisko's station." A moment later, Thomas Lasky's voice emerged from Ops communication system, tight with controlled tension. "Captain Sisko, I'm looking at 8 more hostile contacts inbound. Your people need to evacuate this station now. We can provide covering fire, but that battlecruiser is going to engage regardless of civilian casualties." "Captain Lasky," Sisko said, his voice carrying the authority of a man who'd commanded during the war's darkest hours, "the Jem'Hadar are genetically engineered soldiers programmed for absolute obedience and battlefield aggression. They literally cannot retreat without orders from their Vorta overseers. If you destroy this assault wave, the Dominion will send more. And more. Until either your ship is destroyed or this entire sector becomes a war zone." "Sir," Lasky replied, with respect, "we've fought enemies like that before. The Covenant Sanghaili were honor-bound warriors who'd rather die than surrender. We learned to kill them efficiently. The Jiralhani were berserkers who fought until their hearts stopped. We killed them too. If these Jem'Hadar want to die for their founders, the UNSC has 30 years of experience granting that wish." The Master Chief remained motionless, but something in his posture suggested agreement, the stance of a soldier who'd heard these arguments countless times, who'd made these calculations in the split seconds between contact and engagement. Sisko felt the familiar weight of impossible choices. The Dominion was an existential threat to the Federation, and here was a single ship that had just casually destroyed 3 attack vessels without taking damage. The tactical advantage was staggering. But the cost? "Captain Lasky, the Federation doesn't wage war through superior firepower alone. We survive through diplomacy, through building alliances, through finding solutions that don't require us to kill everyone who threatens us." Even as Sisko spoke, he heard the words ring hollow against the memory of the Defiance quantum torpedoes, of battles where diplomacy had failed and only violence remained. "Captain Sisko," Lasky's voice carried the weariness of a man who'd heard idealism crash against reality too many times, "I respect your principles. Genuinely. But in about 90 seconds, those ships are going to be in weapons range, and they're not going to stop and debate philosophy. The UNSC has standing orders to protect human life and allied civilians when engaged by hostile forces. Your station qualifies. So I'm asking you directly, do you want us to defend Deep Space Nine, or do you want us to withdraw and let you handle this diplomatically?" Kira's tactical display updated. The Jem'Hadar had split into 2 attack wings, clearly intending to bracket the Infinity and concentrate fire from multiple vectors. Standard Dominion doctrine: surround, overwhelm, exploit any tactical weakness. It had worked against countless Federation vessels. Against the Infinity, it would be suicide. "Sir," Kira said quietly, "even if we order them to stand down, those Jem'Hadar are coming for us too. They saw an unknown ship, and we're harboring it. The Dominion doesn't forgive potential collaboration." She was right. The moment Sisko had allowed the Master Chief aboard, the moment he'd attempted dialogue instead of immediate hostile action, DS-9 had been marked as compromised in Dominion tactical assessment. The Vorta would assume collaboration, and the Founders would demand retribution. Sisko looked at the Master Chief, at the walking weapon that represented humanity's capacity for systematic militarization, for turning children into soldiers and survival into doctrine. Everything the Federation had moved beyond, or claimed to have moved beyond. But also, a soldier who'd stood on the line against extinction and held. Who'd fought for 30 years not for conquest or ideology, but for the simple right of his species to continue existing. "Captain Lasky," Sisko said, "you have permission to defend this station. But target their weapons and propulsion only. Disable them if possible. We're not executing prisoners of war." A pause. Then Lasky's voice, carefully neutral, "Understood, Captain. Infinity will exercise tactical restraint. Chief, you're cleared to observe from their operations center." Lasky out. The Master Chief moved to stand beside Dax's science station, positioning himself where he could see the viewscreen and monitor the tactical situation. Dax glanced at him, then pulled up a secondary display showing the Infinity's power signatures. "Your ship's energy output is extraordinary," she said, her curiosity overriding the tension. "Those reactors, are they antimatter-based?" "Deuterium fusion," the chief replied. "For primary reactors generating enough power to maintain slipspace fields and charge the MAC systems simultaneously. Efficient, stable, and difficult to breach catastrophically. Impressive. Our warp cores achieve higher peak output but require constant monitoring to prevent containment failure," the chief finished. "I noticed your station's power signatures. Antimatter containment is vulnerable to cascade breaches if primary magnetic bottles are compromised." Dax's lips quirked into something almost like a smile. "You've done your research. I observe. And adapt." On the view screen, the Jem'Hadar ships entered weapons range and opened fire simultaneously. Phased polaron beams, purple-white lances of directed energy that had devastated Federation shields for 2 years, converged on the Infinity from 8 different vectors. The UNSC vessel's shields flared brilliant cyan as the energy washed across its defensive envelope. For a moment, the beams seemed to be taking effect, the shield's surface rippled and compressed under the sustained bombardment. Then the Infinity returned fire. This time, Sisko watched closely enough to understand the tactical doctrine. The primary MAC guns remained silent, too powerful, too indiscriminate for the restraint he'd requested. Instead, the ship's secondary batteries engaged, M42 Archer missile pods, launching waves of conventional explosives that streaked across the void in spiraling attack patterns. The Jem'Hadar ship's shields absorbed the first wave, but the Archer missiles weren't designed as standalone weapons. They were saturation tools, meant to overwhelm point defenses and clear the way for precision strikes. The Infinity's M910 Rampart guns fired in surgical bursts, each hypersonic round targeted at specific subsystems identified through sensor analysis. Weapons arrays shattered. Impulse drives ruptured. Shield generators exploded in cascading failures that left hull sections exposed to vacuum. Within 45 seconds, 6 Jem'Hadar attack ships drifted powerless, venting atmosphere and debris. Not destroyed. Disabled. The battlecruiser, however, was another matter entirely. The massive Dominion vessel emerged fully from the wormhole, its heavy polaron cannons already tracking toward the Infinity. This wasn't an attack ship crewed by Jem'Hadar bred in hatcheries. This was a command vessel with Vorta overseers and strategic tactical systems designed to engage Galaxy-class starships. Captain Sisko, a new voice transmitted, smooth, measured, carrying the unsettling courtesy of a Vorta administrator. "I am Yelvin, 3rd of the Vorta Diplomatic Service. You are harboring an unauthorized vessel in direct violation of Dominion security protocols. Surrender the unknown ship and its crew for interrogation, or Deep Space Nine will be classified as a hostile military installation and treated accordingly." Sisko's hand tightened on his chair's armrest. Yelvin's tone made it clear, this wasn't negotiation. It was an ultimatum dressed in diplomatic language. Before Sisko could respond, the Master Chief spoke, not to the Vorta, but to him. Captain, the UNSC has a protocol for this scenario. It's called the Cole Protocol. When capture is imminent and intelligence compromise is unacceptable, you destroy your ship and all classified materials. Every UNSC vessel has self-destruct authorization. You're suggesting? I'm saying, the chief interrupted, that if your enemy's goal is to seize our technology, our ship, and our tactical knowledge, we'd rather die than let that happen. Captain Lasky won't surrender. He can't. And that battlecruiser is trying to decide if it can board Infinity before we activate our reactor overload. Kira's console chimed. Benjamin, the battlecruiser is launching Jem'Hadar boarding craft. 20 assault ships heading directly for the Infinity. On the view screen, the UNSC supercarrier's hangar bays opened, and something new emerged into the battlefield. Longsword interceptors, sleek fighter craft that accelerated with chemical rockets and maneuvering thrusters, moving in three-dimensional combat patterns that looked almost chaotic compared to Federation fighter doctrine. The Master Chief watched the engagement unfold with professional detachment. They're protecting the ship. Standard point defense against boarding attempts. Chief, Sisko said carefully, how many soldiers are aboard the Infinity? 17,543 personnel. Including 3 companies of Spartan versus. The chief's helmet turned toward Sisko. If the Dominion boards us, they'll learn why Spartans don't lose ground engagements. The first Jem'Hadar boarding craft reached the Infinity's hull and began cutting through the armor with plasma torches. Inside that massive ship, Sisko realized, soldiers were preparing for close-quarters battle with an enemy they'd never encountered, using tactics forged against the Covenant's best warriors. And somewhere on that battlecruiser, Avorta was calculating whether the intelligence value of capturing UNSC technology outweighed the cost in Jem'Hadar lives. War, Sisko thought bitterly, made everything simple. And terrible. The Jem'Hadar breached Infinity's outer hull on Deck 7, Section 12, a maintenance corridor 3 decks below the primary hangar complex. Plasma cutters carved through the titanium, a 3 battleplate in a shower of molten metal, and the first wave of soldiers poured through the breach with the practiced efficiency of troops who conducted thousands of boarding actions. They found themselves in a darkened corridor lined with conduits and access panels, emergency lighting casting everything in red shadows. Standard shipboard environment. Easy insertion point. Textbook boarding scenario. Then the welcoming committee arrived. The UNSC Marines were already in position, having tracked the breach through internal sensors and deployed with the speed of soldiers who'd fought Covenant boarding parties in zero-gravity chaos. They wore vacuum-sealed combat armor, not powered like Mjolnir, but hardened and tactical, and carried MA-5D assault rifles loaded with armor-piercing rounds. The first leading the Jem'Hadar assault barely had time to register the ambush before the Marines opened fire. The staccato crack of kinetic weapons in enclosed spaces was deafening, and the hypervelocity rounds tore through personal shields that were designed to defuse energy weapons, not stop physical projectiles traveling at supersonic velocities. 3 Jem'Hadar went down in the initial volley. The rest scattered, returning fire with polaron disruptors that scorched bulkheads and melted conduits. Purple energy beams intersected with tracer rounds, and the corridor became a hellscape of crossfire and tactical maneuvering. On DS-9's operations center, the Master Chief stood motionless as internal sensors relayed the battle through Infinity's tactical network. His helmet's HUD displayed casualty reports, ammunition expenditure, and breach status in real time, a flood of data that would have overwhelmed a baseline human but which Spartans processed with augmented neural architecture. 2 more breach points, he reported, his voice carrying no emotion despite watching his fellow soldiers die in real time. Deck 9 and Deck 12. Captain Lasky is deploying Spartan 4 fire teams to each location. Daxa's science station lit up with biometric readings that made her do a double take. Benjamin, I'm detecting new life signs aboard the Infinity, enhanced humans similar to the Chief, but different. Less extensive augmentation, but still significantly beyond baseline. Spartan versus, the Chief explained. Volunteers from the ODST Special Forces. They received augmentation as adults, safer than the Spartan II process, but less effective. Still superior to standard infantry in every measurable category. O'Brien looked up from his engineering console, his face pale. They're fighting hand-to-hand now. The Jem'Hadar broke through the Marine positions on Deck 7. Sweet Jesus, I'm reading feedback from their internal sensors. The Jem'Hadar are fast, brutally fast, but those Spartans. On the tactical overlay, 3 new signatures moved through Infinity's corridors with inhuman speed. The Spartan 4 Fire Team, call signs Fire Team Majestic according to the UNSC transponder data, engaged the Jem'Hadar breakthrough force in close-quarters combat that redefined Sisko's understanding of shipboard warfare. A Spartan designated Thorn intercepted a Jem'Hadar soldier mid-charge, the impact of their collision audible even through sensor feedback. The Spartan's armored fist drove into the Jem'Hadar's ribcage with enough force to crack the genetically enhanced warrior's exoskeleton. Another Spartan, Madsen, used her rifle like a club, the Mjolnir armor's powered servos lending enough strength to the blow to snap a Jem'Hadar's neck with a single strike. Kira watched the carnage with the complex expression of someone who'd fought asymmetric warfare against technologically superior enemies. The Jem'Hadar have numerical advantage, combat stimulants, and fanatical devotion. But these Spartans are fighting like weapons, the Master Chief finished quietly. That's what we are, Major. Purpose-built. Optimized. We don't win because we're better people. We win because we were designed to win. The observation hung in the air like an accusation no one wanted to voice. On the view screen, the Dominion battlecruiser maintained its position, continuing to launch boarding parties despite the catastrophic casualties. Sisko watched the Vorda's calculus play out in real time. Every dead Jem'Hadar was acceptable if it meant potentially capturing UNSC technology. The Founders bred soldiers specifically for this mathematics, lives traded for strategic advantage without hesitation or remorse. Incoming transmission from the battlecruiser, Dax announced. It's the Vorda, Yelvin. The screen split to show the Vorda's pale face, his expression carrying that unsettling serenity that made Vorda so unnerving in combat situations. Behind him, view screens displayed the boarding action from Jem'Hadar helmet cameras, brutal, chaotic, and turning against the Dominion with every passing second. Captain Sisko, Yelvin said with infuriating politeness, your new allies are quite impressive. The Founders will be very interested in studying their augmentation techniques. However, I believe we've reached an impasse. My soldiers cannot capture the vessel intact, and your UNSC friends cannot eliminate my forces without destroying their own ship in the process. Perhaps we should discuss terms. Sisko leaned forward, using the command presence he'd cultivated through years of impossible negotiations. The only terms I'm interested in, Yelvin, are your immediate withdrawal and a cessation of hostilities. The UNSC Infinity is under Federation protection until we determine their status and intentions. Yelvin's smile didn't reach his eyes. A noble sentiment, Captain. But I wonder if you've considered the implications. This UNSC represents a human military force that predates your Federation, a divergent timeline or parallel reality where Earth apparently never learned the lessons that created your peaceful alliance. They're militaristic, aggressive, and clearly accustomed to solving problems through overwhelming violence. He gestured to his view screen, where a Spartan 4 was systematically eliminating Jem'Hadar with surgical precision. You're protecting a version of humanity that you specifically evolved beyond. Don't you find that philosophically troubling? Before Sisko could respond, the Master Chief moved to stand directly in front of the view screen, his massive armored frame dominating the transmission. When he spoke, his voice carried a cold fury that the armor's filters couldn't entirely suppress. You want to talk philosophy? Fine. The UNSC spent 30 years fighting an enemy that wanted to exterminate every human being in the galaxy because their religious leaders declared us an affront to their gods. We lost 23 billion people. We watched colony after colony burn, entire worlds glassed until the surface ran like molten glass. We didn't have the luxury of diplomacy. We didn't have the option of peaceful coexistence. We had survival or extinction. The chief took a step closer to the screen, and something in his body language made even Yelvin's practiced composure flicker. You think you understand war because you've been fighting for 2 years. The UNSC has children who've never known peace. We have soldiers who've been in combat longer than your entire conflict. So when you lecture Captain Sisko about our aggressive nature, understand this, we became what we had to become to survive. And if you want to test whether that makes us weak or vulnerable, keep sending your soldiers into our ship. We'll send them back in bags. Yelvin's smile evaporated. A predictable response from a predictable species. The founders warned us that solids revert to violence when pressed. You're simply proving their wisdom. Then prove your wisdom, the chief countered, and withdraw before you lose an entire battlecruiser for nothing but your pride. The transmission cut abruptly. On the tactical display, the Dominion battlecruiser began charging its main Polaron arrays, not targeting the Infinity this time, but DS-9 itself. Shields up. Sisko barked. All hands, brace for impact. The first Polaron beam struck DS-9's shields with enough force to rock the entire station. Power conduits overloaded across 3 decks, and emergency force fields snapped into place as hull breaches opened in the lower pylons. A second beam followed, then a third, each one calibrated to exploit the shield frequency that the Dominion had painstakingly analyzed over 2 years of warfare. O'Brien's hands flew across his console, rotating shield harmonics and rerouting power from non-essential systems. Shields are holding, but we can't take sustained fire. That battlecruiser outguns us 3-1. The Master Chief's helmet tracked to Sisko. Captain, give the word and Infinity will eliminate that threat. 1 Mach round, center mass. The battlecruiser won't survive. It was the same choice, rephrased. Kill the enemy or risk everyone on the station. Military pragmatism versus Federation principles. Survival versus idealism. Sisko's finger hovered over the comm panel, ready to either order the Infinity to fire or hail the Vorta for one last attempt at de-escalation. 2 years of war had taught him that sometimes violence was the only answer. But 30 years as a Starfleet officer had taught him that the moment you accept that logic unconditionally, you've already lost something essential. Hail the Captain. Kira interrupted. 3 Klingon birds of prey just decloaked at bearing 090. They're moving to intercept the battlecruiser. The view screen shifted to show 3 Quart-class vessels materializing from cloak with the dramatic flair that Klingon never seemed to abandon even in the middle of war. Their disruptor arrays were already charged, and photon torpedoes streaked toward the Dominion battlecruiser in spiraling attack patterns. This is Chancellor Gowron's First Fleet, 8th Squadron. The Klingon commander's voice boomed through the comm system with barely contained aggression. We detected an unknown vessel engaged by Dominion forces. Any enemy of the Dominion is an ally of the Empire. Unknown ship, identify yourself and prepare to receive Klingon reinforcements. The Master Chief's posture shifted, recalculating, reassessing the tactical situation with the addition of new variables. Klingon allies, Sisko said quickly, relief and concern mixing in equal measure. They're part of the alliance against the Dominion, but they're aggressive. Warrior culture. They'll respect strength, but they're unpredictable. Understood. The chief activated his comm link. Infinity, this is Sierra 117. Friendly forces inbound, Klingon vessels, part of local alliance structure. Do not engage unless fired upon. Captain Lasky's response was tight with controlled stress. Copy that, Chief. We've got our hands full with boarders anyway. Deck 7 is secured but decks 9 and 12 are still hot. Fire Team Majestic is engaged with, Christ, these things just won't stay down. On the view screen, the Klingon birds of prey swarmed the Dominion battlecruiser like wolves taking down larger prey. The Vorta's ship was powerful, but 3 Klingon vessels attacking in coordinated fury was overwhelming. Disruptor fire carved through weakened shields, and photon torpedoes detonated against exposed hull sections. The battlecruiser attempted to retreat, its impulse drives flaring as it turned toward the wormhole. The Klingon pursued with bloodthirsty efficiency, their commanders shouting battle cries that Sisko could hear bleeding through their open comm channels. "The Dominion flees," one Klingon captain roared. "Today is a good day to kill cowards." As the battlecruiser disappeared into the wormhole with the Klingon in pursuit, Sisko allowed himself one moment of relief before the next crisis inevitably manifested. The immediate threat was neutralized, but now he had a different problem. Klingon who just rescued the Infinity would expect gratitude, alliance, and probably an invitation to drink blood wine with the warriors aboard the mysterious human warship. The Master Chief seemed to reach the same conclusion. "Captain, the Klingon will want to meet with us." "What's their cultural protocol?" "Direct, blunt, and they respect warriors above all else," Kira answered, a slight smile crossing her face. "Chief, you might actually get along with them. They'll love the whole, walking tank in powered armor aesthetic." Dax pulled up long-range sensors, her expression growing concerned. "Benjamin, the Klingon aren't the only ones who noticed that battle. I'm detecting Romulan warp signatures at the edge of sensor range. They're observing, not engaging, but they're definitely interested in the Infinity." Of course they were. The Romulans never missed an opportunity to gather intelligence on potential threats or assets. A human vessel from an alternate reality or divergent timeline, demonstrating weapons technology that bypassed conventional shields. The Tal Shiar would already be drafting recruitment or elimination scenarios. O'Brien's console chimed with internal security alerts. "Captain, the Jem'Hadar boarding parties aboard the Infinity have been eliminated or captured. The UNSC is requesting medical assistance for casualties, theirs and the Dominion's." Sisko nodded. "Have Dr. Bashir assemble medical teams and transport to the Infinity. Major, coordinate with their security to ensure our people aren't walking into a combat zone." The Master Chief turned toward the docking bay. "I should return to my ship. Captain Lasky will want a full debrief, and we need to assess damage from the boarding action." "Chief," Sisko said, standing from his command chair, "before you go, thank you. For restraining your firepower. For trusting us when you had every reason not to." The Spartan's helmet tilted slightly, an almost human gesture of acknowledgement. "Captain, I've spent my entire life following orders, trusting commanders to make decisions that balance survival with honor. You made a choice that prioritized lives over expedience. That's..." He paused, searching for words that clearly didn't come easily. "That's worth respecting." As the Master Chief headed toward the turbolift, Dax caught Sisko's eye. "He's not wrong, Benjamin. The UNSC could have destroyed that battlecruiser instantly. They could have eliminated the Jem'Hadar boarders without taking prisoners. But they followed your rules of engagement even when it cost them casualties. Which means," Kira added grimly, "they're capable of restraint. That's almost more terrifying than the raw firepower. An enemy you can predict is one thing. An enemy who can choose between annihilation and mercy. That's a threat you can't easily quantify." Sisko watched the Infinity on the view screen, its hull scarred with fresh breaches but its weapons still active, still tracking potential threats with the paranoid vigilance of a military that had learned never to lower its guard. The Federation had just made contact with a human civilization that had survived through militarization, through turning children into supersoldiers, through accepting casualties that would horrify the Federation Council. And now, that civilization was stranded in a universe governed by different rules, surrounded by factions that would either try to recruit them or destroy them. "Get me Captain Lasky," Sisko said quietly. "We need to have a very serious conversation about what happens next. Because the Dominion wouldn't forget this. The Romulans wouldn't ignore it. And the Klingon would absolutely want to test themselves against these UNSC warriors." Deep Space Nine had just become the center of a storm that could reshape the entire Alpha Quadrant. The UNSC Infinity's medical bay was a study in controlled chaos. Dr. Julian Bashir moved through the cramped, utilitarian space with the focused efficiency of a Starfleet officer trained in xenobiology, but his genetically enhanced mind was working overtime to process the sheer alienness of UNSC medical technology. "No dermal regenerators," he muttered, examining a wounded Marine whose shoulder had been scorched by a polaron beam. "They're using what, biofoam? Some kind of polymeric coagulant that seals wounds and prevents infection? Brilliant in its simplicity, but crude compared to cellular regeneration." The UNSC medic assisting him, a young woman whose name tag read Corporal Chen, gave him a look that mixed exhaustion with defensive pride. "Biofoam keeps you alive long enough to reach proper medical facilities. In combat situations, that's all that matters. We don't have the luxury of your fancy technology, Doctor." Bashir caught the edge in her voice and softened his tone. "I didn't mean to imply criticism. Your field medicine is impressive given the constraints. I'm just adapting to different methodologies." In the adjacent bay, 3 Jem'Hadar prisoners lay restrained on medical gurneys, their reptilian features twisted with pain and something that looked disturbingly like confusion. One of them, a third, based on the facial ridging, fixed his eyes on Bashir with the unsettling intensity of a predator assessing prey. "Federation doctor," the Jem'Hadar growled, his voice rough from a punctured lung. "You treat us. Why?" "Because you're wounded," Bashir replied simply, running a medical tricorder over the soldier's injuries. "The Federation doesn't execute prisoners or deny medical care to combatants. It's one of the principles we—" "Weakness," the Jem'Hadar interrupted. "The Founders teach that mercy to enemies is betrayal of purpose. You should have killed us when you had advantage." Corporal Chen, working on another wounded Jem'Hadar nearby, didn't look up from her work. "Yeah, well, we have this thing called the Geneva Convention. Sort of like rules for how you treat prisoners. You might want to look it up." "We are Jem'Hadar," the third said with something approaching contempt. "We require no conventions. We are bred for war and die gladly for the Founders. Your rules are irrelevant." Bashir exchanged glances with Chen, recognizing the fundamental disconnect. The Jem'Hadar weren't being obstinate, they genuinely couldn't comprehend a military culture that prioritized prisoner welfare. Their genetic programming made the concept as alien as Bashir's medical technology was to the UNSC. A door hissed open, and Captain Thomas Lasky entered the medical bay with Master Chief at his side. Lasky was in his mid-40s, his face carrying the weathered lines of someone who'd commanded during impossible circumstances. Unlike the chief's armored anonymity, Lasky's humanity was visible, the doubt, the exhaustion, the weight of 17,000 lives under his responsibility. "Dr. Bashir," Lasky said, offering a hand that Bashir shook. "Thank you for your assistance. We've got 43 wounded from the boarding action, 38 UNSC personnel and 5 Dominion prisoners. Your medical technology is apparently more advanced than ours in some areas. We'd appreciate any help you can provide." "Of course, Captain." Bashir gestured to his medical team, Nurse Bandy and 2 technicians who were already working on wounded Marines with a combination of Federation and UNSC techniques. "Though I should mention that your doctors have been incredibly professional. The integration of our technologies is proceeding smoothly." Lasky's expression flickered with something that might have been relief. "That's good to hear. Cooperation is not something the UNSC has had much opportunity to practice with alien species. Our experience with the Covenant was fairly one-sided until the very end of the war." The Master Chief had moved to stand near the Jem'Hadar prisoners, his helmet tracking their vital signs through his HUD. "These soldiers are genetically engineered for combat," he observed. "Accelerated growth, enhanced musculature, redundant organs. Similar doctrine to the Spartan programs, but less sophisticated." One of the Jem'Hadar, the third, turned his head toward the chief with visible effort. "You understand. You are also weapon. Shaped by creators, for war." The chief was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a quality that Bashir couldn't quite identify, something between acknowledgement and rejection. The difference is that Spartans chose this. The Jem'Hadar didn't get a choice. The Jem'Hadar's laugh was a wet, pained sound. Founders gave us purpose. Glory. What more could we choose? Before the chief could respond, Corporal Chen's console chimed urgently. Captain, we've got incoming shuttles requesting docking clearance. Klingon signatures, they're not waiting for formal authorization. Lasky's hand moved instinctively toward the M6 Magnum holstered at his hip. Battle stations? Not yet, the chief advised. Captain Sisko indicated the Klingon are allies. They'll want to meet the warriors who held off the Dominion boarding parties. It's a cultural thing, respect through strength. Wonderful, Lasky muttered. First contact with an alien species, and its warriors who respect violence. At least that's familiar territory. The Infinity's internal speakers crackled with Roland's voice, the ship's AI, speaking with the slightly sardonic tone that all smart AIs seem to develop. Captain, 3 Klingon shuttles have docked without authorization at hangar bays 2, 5, and 7. They're emerging armed and apparently very excited to meet us. Should I activate defensive protocols? Negative, Roland. Let them through, but have security teams standing by. Lasky turned to the chief. You're with me. If these Klingon are as aggressive as Captain Sisko suggested, having a Spartan 2 present might establish the appropriate tone. They found the Klingon in Hangar Bay 2, and the scene was exactly as chaotic as Lasky had feared. A dozen Klingon warriors had disembarked from their shuttle and were examining a damaged Pelican dropship with the kind of aggressive curiosity that suggested they were one comment away from either fighting someone or declaring eternal friendship. The lead Klingon was a barrel-chested warrior with elaborate armor and a mane of wild dark hair shot through with gray. He turned as Lasky and the chief approached, and his face split into a grin that showed far too many teeth. Ah! The human warriors who bloodied the Dominion's nose. I am Commander Koloth of the IKS Giaroth. His voice boomed through the hangar, and several UNSC Marines instinctively raised their weapons. We watched your battle from cloak. Impressive. Your weapons technology is brutal and effective. The Dominion assault ships fell like dishonored PTQ. Lasky extended his hand cautiously. Captain Thomas Lasky, UNSC Infinity. We appreciate your intervention, Commander Koloth. Koloth ignored the offered hand and instead grabbed Lasky's shoulders in what was probably meant as a friendly gesture but felt more like being seized by a friendly bear. Appreciation? We should be thanking you. It's been too long since we've seen worthy opponents humiliate the Dominion so thoroughly. Your ship, magnificent. A true warship, not one of these soft Federation explorers pretending to be battle-ready. His eyes shifted to the Master Chief, and something predatory entered his expression. And this? This is your champion. Your greatest warrior. He circled the chief like a wolf evaluating potential prey. Tall. Armored. Silent. You have the bearing of someone who has killed many enemies. How many, I wonder? The chief stood perfectly still, letting the Klingon's assessment wash over him without reaction. When he finally spoke, his voice was level and factual. I don't keep count, Commander. I complete missions. Enemy casualties are a byproduct, not a goal. Koloth barked a laugh. Spoken like a true professional. No glory-seeking, no boasting, just cold efficiency. The Jem'Hadar would respect that, if they weren't too fanatical to respect anything. He turned back to Lasky. Captain, you must share blood wine with us. We'll toast your victory and discuss how the UNSC might aid the Empire against the Dominion. Your weapons technology could tip the balance of the war. Lasky felt the conversation sliding away from him. The Klingon weren't interested in diplomacy, they wanted alliance through mutual respect for combat effectiveness. It was transactional, warrior to warrior, and completely outside of Lasky's experience with the careful political maneuvering that Covenant negotiations had required. "Commander Koloth," Lasky said carefully, "the UNSC appreciates your offer, but we're still assessing our situation. We didn't intend to arrive in this reality, and we don't fully understand the political dynamics of the conflicts here." Politics. Koloth spat the word like a curse. That is Federation thinking. The Empire understands strength, honor, and victory. You have demonstrated all three. What more assessment do you need? Before Lasky could formulate a response that wouldn't offend the volatile Klingon, Roland's voice interrupted through the hangar speakers. "Captain, we have a situation. A Romulan warbird just decloaked at extreme sensor range and is transmitting a priority message. They're requesting direct communication with you specifically. Should I route it to the hangar?" Lasky and the chief exchanged looks. The Romulans, the species Captain Sisko had described as secretive, strategic, and Machiavellian. If they were making open contact instead of gathering intelligence covertly, it meant they'd already decided the Infinity was important enough to risk exposure. "Put them through," Lasky said. A holographic display materialized from one of the hangar's tactical projectors, showing a Romulan woman in military uniform. Her features were sharp, intelligent, and carried the distinctive pointed ears and severe hairstyle of her species. When she spoke, her voice was cultured and measured, a stark contrast to Kolotha's booming aggression. "Captain Lasky. I am Commander Torith of the Romulan warbird Valdor. On behalf of the Romulan Star Empire, I extend greetings and an offer of mutual interest. Your vessel's unexpected arrival has created a unique opportunity for strategic cooperation." Koloth growled. "Romulans. Dishonorable PTQ who hide behind cloaks and lies. Captain Lasky, do not trust anything this snake says." Toritha's expression didn't change, but something cold entered her eyes. "Commander Koloth. Still compensating for tactical inadequacy with volume, I see. Captain Lasky, I'm sure the Klingon have offered you blood wine and promises of glorious battle. Very straightforward. The Romulan Empire offers something more valuable, information, resources, and the kind of strategic alliance that could help you return to your proper reality." That got Lasky's attention. "You're claiming you can send us home?" "I'm claiming," Torith replied smoothly, "that the Romulan Empire has access to spatial anomaly research and dimensional mechanics that far exceed Federation capabilities. Whether we choose to help you depends on whether our interests align. I suggest a private discussion, away from Klingon ears." Koloth stepped forward, his hand moving toward the DK Tog blade at his belt. "You dare insult the Empire in front of allies?" "Captain Lasky, this is typical Romulan deception. They want your technology for themselves." The Master Chief moved, not aggressively, but with enough intent to place himself between Koloth and the holographic display. "Commander, lower your weapon. Captain Lasky is considering all options." For a moment, the hangar balanced on the edge of violence. Klingon warriors tensed, UNSC Marines raised their MA-5D rifles, and Torith watched through the holographic display with the satisfied expression of someone whose manipulation had achieved exactly the desired effect. Then Lasky spoke, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd commanded during the worst years of the Human Covenant War. "Everyone stand down. Now." He turned to Koloth. "Commander, your assistance today is appreciated, and the UNSC doesn't forget its debts. But we don't make strategic decisions based on who shows up first with the loudest voice. To Torith, Commander, your offer is noted. But understand that the UNSC has 30 years of experience dealing with species who promise cooperation while pursuing their own agendas. If you want to discuss terms, it'll be through proper diplomatic channels with full transparency." Toritha's slight smile suggested she'd expected exactly this response. "Admirably cautious, Captain. Very well. I'll transmit our formal proposal to your vessel. Review it at your leisure. But I should mention, the Dominion will not forget what happened today. Neither will the Borg, when they inevitably detect your unique technology. The Romulan Empire can offer protection that the Federation's idealism cannot. The transmission ended, leaving Lasky standing between a frustrated Klingon and a ship full of UNSC personnel who just realized that their arrival had made them the most valuable strategic asset in an ongoing multifactional war. "Captain," the chief said quietly, "we need to speak with Captain Sisko. This situation is escalating beyond tactical engagement. We're becoming a political variable." Lasky nodded, exhaustion evident in his posture. "Roland, contact Deep Space Nine. Tell Captain Sisko we need an emergency conference, representatives from the Federation, Klingon Empire, and apparently the Romulan Empire. Whether we like it or not, the UNSC just became a player in their war." Koloth clapped Lasky on the shoulder hard enough to stagger a baseline human. "Finally. Political maneuvering. This is where true warriors prove their worth, not just in battle, but in the Game of Thrones and alliances. Captain, you're learning. There may be hope for the UNSC yet." As the Klingon departed, still laughing and discussing the Infinity's weapons capabilities, Lasky turned to the chief. 30 years fighting the Covenant, and I never felt this politically outmaneuvered. At least with the Covenant, we knew they wanted us dead. Here. I can't tell who's an ally and who's waiting for the right moment to betray us. The Master Chief's helmet turned toward the viewport, where Deep Space Nine hung against the backdrop of stars that weren't home. "Welcome to diplomacy, Captain. Where the enemy isn't always the one shooting at you." The wardroom aboard Deep Space Nine had never felt quite so claustrophobic. Captain Sisko stood at the head of the conference table, flanked by Major Kira and Lieutenant Commander Dax, facing a collection of representatives who embodied every complicated political reality the Alpha Quadrant had to offer. Captain Thomas Lasky sat with the Master Chief standing behind him, the Spartan's presence a silent reminder of UNSC military capability. Commander Koloth occupied the opposite end of the table with two of his officers, their aggressive posture suggesting they'd rather be fighting than talking. And on the view screen, Commander Toritha's holographic presence represented the Romulan Star Empire with the kind of calculated courtesy that made every word feel like a chess move. "Let me summarize our situation," Sisko began, his voice carrying the diplomatic weight of someone who'd negotiated with founders, Cardassians, and the prophets themselves. 3 days ago, the UNSC Infinity emerged through a spatial anomaly into our reality. Since then, they've engaged Dominion forces, allied with the Klingon Empire, and attracted Romulan attention. We need to establish clear protocols before this situation destabilizes the entire sector. Koloth slammed his fist on the table, a gesture that made Kira's hand move toward her phaser. "Protocols. The UNSC has already proven their worth in battle. They destroyed 3 Dominion attack ships without taking damage and repelled boarding parties with minimal casualties. The Empire offers formal military alliance. It's simple." "Nothing," Torith said smoothly from the view screen, "is ever simple, Commander Koloth. Captain Lasky, the Romulan Empire has analyzed your vessel's weapon signatures and propulsion systems. Your slipspace technology operates on principles similar to our artificial quantum singularity drives, but with fascinating variations. We have scientists who could potentially repair your drive and return you to your proper reality." Lasky's expression remained neutral, but Sisko caught the flicker of hope quickly suppressed. "That's a generous offer, Commander Torith. What does the Romulan Empire want in exchange?" "Information," Torith replied, her tone suggesting this was the most reasonable request in the galaxy. "Technical specifications for your kinetic accelerator weapons, your shield technology, and any data you possess about this Covenant you fought for 3 decades. The Empire values knowledge above all else." "Knowledge you'll weaponize against the Federation," Kira interjected, her voice sharp. "Let's not pretend this is academic curiosity. You want UNSC technology to tip the balance of power in the quadrant." Toritha's slight smile acknowledged the accusation without confirming it. "Major Neres, the Federation's Prime Directive prevents you from sharing advanced technology with less developed civilizations. We have no such restrictions. The UNSC needs allies who can offer practical assistance without moral equivocation. The Master Chief's helmet turned toward Lasky, and though no words were spoken, Sisko recognized the silent communication between commander and subordinate. Trust no one. Evaluate all options. Survival first. Dax leaned forward, her scientific curiosity temporarily overriding political caution. Captain Lasky, your slipspace drive, when it malfunctioned, did your sensors detect any unusual quantum signatures? Verteron particles, chronoton radiation, anything that might explain the dimensional breach? Lasky glanced at the chief, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. Our AI, Roland, detected what he classified as a subspace fracture, not slipspace topology, but something intersecting our jump corridor. The drive attempted to abort but was pulled through anyway. We have the sensor logs, but they don't match any phenomenon in UNSC databases. Because, Dax said, excitement entering her voice, you encountered our universe's subspace layer. Your slipspace technology and our warp drive operate on similar principles but through different dimensional frameworks. When your drive intersected with a subspace anomaly, possibly related to the Bajoran wormhole's unique properties, it created a bridge between realities. Can you reverse it? Lasky asked, and the naked hope in his voice made Sisko's chest tighten. This wasn't a military commander calculating strategic advantage. This was a man who wanted to go home. Dax's expression turned apologetic. Theoretically, yes. But we'd need to recreate the exact conditions of the anomaly, calibrate your drive to interface with subspace instead of slipspace, and, well, there's no guarantee it wouldn't kill everyone aboard your ship or collapse both dimensional frameworks into each other. Unacceptable risk, the chief said immediately. The UNSC doesn't gamble with crew lives on theoretical physics. Koloth laughed, the sound carrying genuine respect. Spoken like a true warrior. Captain Lasky, forget returning home. You're here now, and the Empire offers you purpose. Fight alongside us against the Dominion. Shed blood for glory and honor. What more could warriors want? To protect our people, Lasky replied quietly. Commander, the UNSC didn't choose this war. We were pulled into it. Every moment we spend here is a moment we're not defending our own reality, our own Earth, our own colonies. We have responsibilities. As do we all, Sisko said, recognizing the weight Lasky carried. Captain, the Federation understands your position. We're not asking you to abandon your mission or your people. But while you're here, you're subject to the same realities we face. The Dominion views you as a threat. The Borg, if they detect your unique technology, will seek to assimilate it. You need allies, whether you want them or not. Toritha's holographic image leaned forward. Captain Sisko makes a valid point, though I'm surprised to hear the Federation acknowledge such pragmatism. Captain Lasky, isolationism is not an option. You must choose, align with the Federation's moral restrictions, accept the Klingon Empire's warrior culture, or work with the Romulan Empire's practical approach. There are no other alternatives. There's always another alternative, the Master Chief said, his voice cutting through the political maneuvering like a blade. The UNSC maintains independence and negotiates terms with all factions as equals. We don't subordinate ourselves to anyone's command structure or ideology. Kolotha's eyes gleamed with approval. Ah! The Spartan speaks wisdom. Independence through strength. Captain Lasky, perhaps the UNSC and the Empire are more alike than I thought. No, the chief corrected, and something in his tone made even Koloth pause. The UNSC fights for survival, not glory. We don't seek battle, we end it. That's the difference. Before Koloth could respond, the wardroom's door chimed. O'Brien's voice came through the comm system, tight with urgency. Captain Sisko, we've got a situation. A Vorta diplomatic vessel just emerged from the wormhole, and they're requesting immediate conference with all parties present, including the UNSC representatives. Sisko's jaw tightened. The Dominion is already making their move. They want to assess the UNSC directly, possibly recruit them. Or threaten them, Kira added grimly. Vorta don't waste time on diplomacy unless the founders have already decided the target's strategic value. Lasky stood, his hand instinctively moving toward his sidearm. Captain Sisko, what's your recommendation? Hear what they have to say, Sisko replied, moving toward the door. But don't trust a single word. The founders view solids, anyone who isn't a changeling, as inherently inferior. They'll make promises they have no intention of keeping. As they returned to ops, the Vorta vessel appeared on the main view screen, a small diplomatic craft, deliberately non-threatening in appearance. The transmission request was already queued, and when Sisko authorized it, a familiar face appeared. Weyoun. Fifth iteration of the Vorta diplomatic clone, his expression carrying that unsettling combination of politeness and absolute certainty in the founder's superiority. Captain Sisko, how delightful to see you again. And you must be Captain Lasky of the UNSC Infinity. Weyoun's smile was perfectly calibrated, friendly without warmth, interested without genuine curiosity. The founders have been most intrigued by your arrival. A human military force from an alternate reality, possessing technology that operates on principles we've never encountered. Fascinating. Get to the point, Weyoun, Sisko said flatly. You didn't come here for small talk. Direct as always, Captain. Very well. Weyoun turned his full attention to Lasky, and his expression shifted to something approaching genuine respect. Captain Lasky, the Dominion recognizes strength and pragmatism. Your forces defeated our soldiers decisively, a rare accomplishment. The founders believe you could be valuable allies in bringing order to the Alpha Quadrant. Allies? Lasky's voice carried skepticism. Your soldiers tried to board my ship and seize it by force. That's not how the UNSC defines alliance. Weyoun's smile never wavered. A misunderstanding. The Jem'Hadar are direct in their threat assessment. But now that we understand your capabilities, the founders wish to extend a formal offer. Join the Dominion. Help us establish order throughout the quadrant. In exchange, we'll provide resources, repair facilities, and, he paused for emphasis, access to Dominion scientific knowledge regarding dimensional mechanics. We have extensive data on spatial anomalies, including methods that could potentially return you to your proper reality. The wardroom went silent. It was the same offer Torith had made, but backed by the Dominion's vast resources and scientific infrastructure. And it came with the implicit threat, align with us, or become our enemy. The Master Chief stepped forward. You're offering to help us get home if we help you conquer the Federation and their allies. That's the deal. Such harsh language, Weyoun replied, his tone suggesting injured feelings. The Dominion doesn't conquer, we bring order to chaos. The Alpha Quadrant has been destabilized by the Federation's naive idealism and the Klingon aggressive posturing. With UNSC assistance, we could end this war quickly, with minimal additional casualties. And after the war, the chief pressed. What happens to species the Dominion views as inferior? The ones who don't submit to founder authority. Weyoun's expression flickered, just for a moment, with something that looked like genuine confusion. But, the founders are gods. Their authority is absolute. Submission isn't oppression, it's enlightenment. Surely, Captain Lasky, you understand the necessity of hierarchy? Your military operates on chain of command, does it not? Chain of command, Lasky said carefully, isn't the same as genetic superiority and enforced worship. The UNSC respects authority, but we don't treat any species as inherently superior to others. Then you've never met the founders, Weyoun replied with absolute certainty. Once you do, you'll understand. They are perfect. Beautiful. Everything we solids are not. Kira's expression twisted with disgust. You're a slave, Weyoun. Genetically programmed to worship shapeshifters who view you as a useful tool. And you're trying to recruit the UNSC into the same servitude. Wei-Aun turned to her with something approaching pity. Major Neres, you mistake purpose for servitude. The Vorta were blessed by the founders, elevated from primitive creatures to something meaningful. The wardroom went silent. It was the same offer Torith had made, but backed by the Dominion's vast resources and scientific infrastructure. And it came with the implicit threat, align with us, or become our enemy. The Master Chief stepped forward. You're offering to help us get home if we help you conquer the Federation and their allies. That's the deal. Such harsh language, Wei-Aun replied, his tone suggesting injured feelings. The Dominion doesn't conquer, we bring order to chaos. The Alpha Quadrant has been destabilized by the Federation's naive idealism and the Klingon aggressive posturing. With UNSC assistance, we could end this war quickly, with minimal additional casualties. And after the war, the chief pressed. What happens to species the Dominion views as inferior? The ones who don't submit to founder authority? Wei-Aun's expression flickered, just for a moment, with something that looked like genuine confusion. But, the founders are gods. Their authority is absolute. Submission isn't oppression, it's enlightenment. Surely, Captain Lasky, you understand the necessity of hierarchy? Your military operates on chain of command, does it not? Chain of command, Lasky said carefully, isn't the same as genetic superiority and enforced worship. The UNSC respects authority, but we don't treat any species as inherently superior to others. Then you've never met the founders, Wei-Aun replied with absolute certainty. Once you do, you'll understand. They are perfect. Beautiful. Everything we solids are not. Kira's expression twisted with disgust. You're a slave, Wei-Aun. Genetically programmed to worship shapeshifters who view you as a useful tool. And you're trying to recruit the UNSC into the same servitude. Wei-Aun turned to her with something approaching pity. Major Neres, you mistake purpose for servitude. The Vorta were blessed by the founders, elevated from primitive creatures to something meaningful. We serve not from compulsion, but from love. Captain Lasky, imagine, 17,000 crew members, all given purpose beyond mere survival. All part of something greater than yourselves. The Master Chief's voice cut through Wei-Aun's rhetoric like a blade. We already have purpose. We protect humanity. We fight for survival, not for gods who demand worship. And we've seen what happens when you trust species who claim genetic superiority. The Covenant tried that philosophy for 30 years. It ended with billions dead and their entire civilization in ruins. For the first time, Wei-Aun's composure cracked. Just slightly, just enough to reveal genuine surprise. You refused an offer of alliance with a superior species. Chose conflict over cooperation. We chose freedom over enslavement, the chief replied. Every time. Without hesitation. Wei-Aun recovered quickly, his diplomatic mask sliding back into place. I see. Well, Captain Lasky, the Founder's offer remains open. Consider it carefully. The Dominion controls the Gamma Quadrant and is expanding into the Alpha Quadrant. The Federation is losing this war. The Klingon are expendable. The Romulans are opportunists. The UNSC, however, you could tip the balance. Choose wisely. The transmission ended, leaving the wardroom in heavy silence. Koloth was the first to speak, his voice uncharacteristically serious. The Vorta speaks truth about one thing, the war is not going well for the Federation. We've lost too many ships, too many warriors. If the UNSC sides with the Dominion. We won't, Lasky said firmly. The UNSC has fought against genetic supremacy ideologies before. We know where that path leads. Toritha's holographic image reappeared, her expression thoughtful. A noble sentiment, Captain. But nobility doesn't repair your ship or return you home. The Romulan empires offer stands, technology exchange and scientific cooperation without demands of subservience. We recognize the UNSC as equals, not subordinates. Until we're not useful anymore, Kira shot back. Then what? You sell us to the Dominion? Use our technology against the Federation? Major, Torith replied coolly, the Romulan Empire honors its agreements. We're pragmatic, yes, but not treacherous. There's a difference. Sisko held up his hand, silencing the escalating argument. Enough. Captain Lasky, you need time to assess your options without political pressure. The Federation offers you sanctuary at Deep Space Nine while you make repairs and analyze the spatial anomaly that brought you here. No conditions, no demands for alliance. Just, breathing room. Lasky looked at Sisko with genuine gratitude. Thank you, Captain. That's the first offer today that didn't come with strings attached. Oh, it has strings, Sisko admitted honestly. The Federation will expect you to respect our borders, follow our regulations while in Federation space, and not destabilize our ongoing conflicts. But those are conditions of coexistence, not servitude. The Master Chief moved closer to Lasky, speaking quietly enough that only enhanced hearing or directional audio could catch it. But Sisko's console picked it up anyway, and what he heard made his blood run cold. Captain, we need to discuss contingency protocols. If the Dominion, Romulans, or even the Federation attempt to seize Infinity, we need to be ready to implement Cole Protocol. Cole Protocol. The Chief had mentioned it before, the UNSC's policy of destroying their own ships rather than allowing capture. Lasky nodded slightly. Agreed. Brief the Spartan 4 teams and prepare demolition charges on all critical systems. If this goes wrong. Understood, sir. Sisko cleared his throat, making his presence known. Captain Lasky, I heard that. And I need you to understand something, the Federation will not attempt to seize your vessel. We respect sovereignty and self-determination. But if you're seriously considering self-destructing a 6-kilometer warship within 40,000 kilometers of a civilian station, then we'll make sure you have enough warning to evacuate, Lasky finished quietly. Captain Sisko, I appreciate your principles. Genuinely. But the UNSC has learned that principles don't survive first contact with existential threats. We hope it doesn't come to that. But we prepare for it anyway. It was the most honest answer Sisko had heard all day. And somehow, that made it worse. The promenade of Deep Space Nine had always been a microcosm of Alpha Quadrant diversity, Bajorans and humans mingling with Ferengi merchants, the occasional Cardassian trader, and visitors from dozens of Federation worlds. But the arrival of UNSC personnel created a disruption that no amount of diplomatic briefing could have prevented. Master Chief John 117 walked through the commercial district with the measured stride of someone perpetually assessing tactical situations. His Mjolnir armor drew stares from every direction, children pointing with wide eyes, adults maintaining careful distance, security officers tracking his movement with hands near phasers. He was a walking reminder that humanity could evolve in radically different directions. Behind him, 3 Spartan Iverses from Fire Team Majestic maintained a loose perimeter, Commander Sarah Palmer, her red-striped armor marking her as team leader, Paul DeMarco, whose easy confidence masked razor-sharp reflexes, and Holly Tanaka, whose engineering background made her constantly analyze the station's infrastructure with professional interest. This place is like a mall had a baby with a military outpost, DeMarco observed, his voice transmitted through the team's encrypted comm channel. Half the stores are selling religious artifacts, the other half are bars. I can't tell if this is a commerce hub or a recreational facility. Both, the Master Chief replied. Deep Space Nine serves as a border station, trade hub, and strategic military position. The promenade provides civilian morale maintenance and economic activity. Palmer's helmet turned toward a Ferengi merchant who was openly gawking at her armor. And apparently, it provides entertainment for the locals. We're attracting more attention than I'm comfortable with, Chief. They were heading toward Quark's bar, Captain Sisko's suggestion for informal cultural exchange, which the chief recognized as diplomatic code for let people get used to you before someone starts a panic. The bar's entrance was marked by flashing lights and the sound of Dabo wheels spinning, overlaid with conversation in a dozen languages. Inside, the atmosphere was simultaneously welcoming and predatory. Quark himself, a Ferengi whose lobes twitched at the sight of potential customers, approached with the practiced smile of someone calculating profit margins in real time. "Welcome, welcome. You must be the UNSC soldiers everyone's talking about. I'm Quark, proprietor of this fine establishment. First drink is on the house, call it an investment in future business relationships." His eyes tracked across their armor, clearly appraising its value. "That's quite impressive equipment. Custom fabrication? Military grade? I know some traders in the Gamma Quadrant who'd pay latinum for technology like that." Palmer's voice carried warning. "It's not for sale." "Everything's for sale," Quark countered smoothly. "It's just a matter of finding the right price. Rule of acquisition number." "We're familiar with your rules," the chief interrupted, moving toward a table that provided clear sightlines to all entrances. "Captain Sisko briefed us. We're not interested in commercial transactions." Quark's expression shifted to wounded innocence. "Who said anything about transactions? I'm simply offering hospitality to our distinguished guests. Although, if you happen to have any surplus weapons technology or perhaps some of those kinetic accelerator specifications." "No." The Ferengi sighed dramatically. "Military types. Always so serious." "Fine, fine. What can I get you?" "We've got Romulan ale, technically illegal but available for discerning customers, Klingon blood wine, Saurian brandy, or if you want something from Earth, I've got water," all four Spartans said simultaneously. Quark blinked. "Water. You want water. Do you have any idea how much effort went into smuggling that Romulan ale past customs?" "Water," Palmer repeated firmly. As Quark retreated, muttering about profit margins and disappointing customers, the chief scanned the bar's other patrons. A group of off-duty Starfleet officers occupied the Dabo tables, their relaxed posture suggesting shore leave rather than duty rotation. In the corner, a Bajoran couple shared drinks and quiet conversation. And at the bar itself, a figure in civilian clothes watched the Spartans with poorly concealed interest. Tanaka's HUD flagged the observer. "Chief, we've got eyes on us. Human, male, 30s, elevated heart rate and pupil dilation suggesting enhanced focus. Possible intelligence operative." "Confirmed," the chief replied. "Maintain casual posture. Let him make first contact." They didn't have to wait long. The man approached with the careful confidence of someone trained to infiltrate and gather information, not quite military, not quite civilian. When he spoke, his voice was pleasant and entirely unremarkable. "Mind if I join you? It's not often we get visitors with such distinctive equipment." Palmer gestured to an empty chair, her hand remaining near her M6 sidearm. "Free station. But if you're working for Section 31, you should know we're aware of your organization's existence." The man's pleasant expression never wavered, but something flickered in his eyes, surprise, quickly masked. "I'm afraid I don't know what you're referring to. I'm just a curious civilian." Julian Bashir, station medical officer. He extended a hand that the chief didn't shake. "Dr. Bashir," the chief said, his helmet's vocal processor stripping inflection from his words. "Captain Sisko mentioned you. Genetically enhanced. Superior intellect, pattern recognition, enhanced physical capabilities. Section 31 recruitment target." Bashir's facade cracked slightly. "You've done your homework. Though I should mention that I declined their recruitment attempts. Multiple times. I'm here as the station's doctor, nothing more." "Then why the elevated stress indicators?" Tanaka asked, her engineering precision extending to biometric analysis. Heart rate increasing, micro-expressions suggesting calculated responses. You're evaluating us for someone. Bashir leaned back, genuine respect entering his expression. You're good. Very good. Fine, I'll be direct. Captain Sisko asked me to make informal contact because I'm one of the few people on this station who might understand what you are. Genetically enhanced humans, military applications, ethical complications. I've lived that story, just without the powered armor and 30-year war. What do you want to know? The chief asked, recognizing an opportunity for intelligence exchange. How do you live with it? Bashir's question was blunt, carrying personal weight. I was enhanced as a child, 6 years old, illegally modified because my parents thought I wasn't developing properly. I've spent my entire adult life dealing with the consequences, the suspicion, the knowledge that I'm not, quite, human anymore. But you, Spartans, you were enhanced specifically for warfare. How do you reconcile being turned into weapons? The silence stretched. Palmer and DeMarco exchanged glances, their body language suggesting this was territory the chief rarely discussed. Tanaka simply waited, recognizing that some questions deserved considered answers. We reconcile it, the chief finally said, by understanding that we were created to protect humanity from extinction. The Covenant killed 23 billion people. Without Spartans, that number would have been 39 billion. Total extinction. We didn't choose augmentation, you're right about that. But we chose to keep fighting after we understood what we'd become. And the children who didn't survive the augmentation process? Bashir pressed. The 50% who died during the procedures. How do you reconcile that? We don't. The chief's voice carried an edge that made even Palmer tense. We remember them. Every one. And we make sure their deaths weren't meaningless by completing the mission they died for. Bashir studied the chief's reflective visor, perhaps searching for the human face beneath the armor. That's not reconciliation. That's survivor's guilt weaponized into motivation. Doctor, Palmer interjected, her tone diplomatic but firm, with respect, you're analyzing us like we're patients. We're soldiers. We don't have the luxury of processing trauma through therapy sessions. We process it by staying alive and keeping others alive. Before Bashir could respond, the bar's atmosphere shifted. The casual conversation dimmed, replaced by tension that rippled through the crowd like a pressure wave. The chief's motion sensors flagged new arrivals before his eyes confirmed them, Jem'Hadar. 4 of them, moving through Quark's entrance with the predatory grace of apex predators invading foreign territory. They wore civilian clothes, an almost comical sight given their reptilian features and warrior physiology, but their eyes tracked threats with professional precision. The leader, a first based on facial ridging, locked eyes with the chief across the bar. Recognition sparked, not personal, but tactical. Warrior acknowledging warrior. Quark materialized from behind the bar with impressive speed. Now, everyone stay calm. This is a neutral establishment. Federation regulations prohibit hostile actions in civilian areas. We're not here for Federation regulations, the Jem'Hadar first said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent bar. We're here to speak with the UNSC soldiers. The ones who killed our brothers. Starfleet security officers emerged from strategic positions, phasers drawn but not aimed, ready but not escalating. The chief recognized the choreography of potential violence contained by mutual uncertainty. You have us at a disadvantage, the chief said, standing slowly to prevent misinterpretation of aggressive intent. You know who we are. Who are you? The first moved closer, his movements controlled but radiating barely suppressed aggression. I am Remeda Clan, first of the 12th Order. My Jem'Hadar brothers died attempting to seize your ship. 14 soldiers under my command. Dead because the Vorta ordered an assault against an unknown enemy without proper reconnaissance. You're here for revenge, Palmer stated, her hand moving to her sidearm. No. Remeda Clan's answer surprised everyone, including his own soldiers. I'm here to understand. Jem'Hadar are bred for victory. We train from birth to overwhelm any enemy. But your Spartans defeated us decisively. Without heavy casualties. Without tactical advantage. You fought as if you'd been fighting Jem'Hadar for years, anticipating our doctrine, countering our strengths. The chief processed the admission, recognizing something he'd seen before, a warrior seeking to learn from defeat rather than simply avenge it. Your soldiers were skilled. Aggressive, coordinated, fearless. But you fight with predictable doctrine, frontal assault, numerical superiority, overwhelming force. The UNSC spent 30 years fighting enemies who used similar tactics. We learned to counter them. The Covenant, Remediclan said, and the chief realized that Jem'Hadar had been researching UNSC combat history. Your previous enemy. Religious zealots who believed in their own superiority. Like the founders. The comparison hung in the air, dangerous and provocative. The other Jem'Hadar soldiers tensed, their genetic loyalty to the founders warring with their warriors' recognition of tactical truth. The founders are gods, one of them said, but his voice carried less certainty than Jem'Hadar doctrine demanded. Are they? The chief asked quietly. Or are they shapeshifters who engineered a species to worship them? The Covenant's prophets claimed divine authority too. They were just politicians manipulating religion for power. When we finally killed them, they died like anyone else. Remediclan's expression was unreadable, but his posture shifted subtly, no longer quite as hostile, now more contemplative. You killed your gods. They weren't gods, Palmer said. They were frauds. And yes, we killed them. Then we helped the Covenant species who'd been enslaved by that fraud rebuild their civilizations on their own terms. The Jem'Hadar first was silent for a long moment, processing information that fundamentally challenged his genetic programming. Finally, he spoke, I cannot question the founders. My genes forbid it. But I can acknowledge tactical reality, you defeated us because you fought this war before. I came here to learn how. Why? Tanaka asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. You're bred for absolute loyalty. Why risk questioning doctrine? Because, Remediclan said simply, the Vorda's tactical decisions killed my brothers unnecessarily. Obedience is sacred. Waste is not. If the UNSC can teach the Jem'Hadar to fight more effectively, fewer brothers die achieving the Founders' objectives. That is not disloyalty. That is efficiency. The chief recognized the razor's edge this Jem'Hadar was walking, finding space for tactical evolution within absolute ideological loyalty. It was the same logic that had eventually fractured the Covenant when individual species realized their tactical interests didn't align with Prophet doctrine. Remediclan, the chief said carefully, if you want to learn from our tactics, I can share general principles. The Borg cube detected the Infinity's unique energy signature 3 days after the battle with the Dominion. It emerged from transwarp exactly 0.3 light-years from Deep Space Nine's position, close enough to constitute immediate threat, far enough to suggest calculated observation rather than reflexive aggression. The cube was massive even by Borg standards, 28 cubic kilometers of assimilated technology, housing approximately 129,000 drones and computational processing power that exceeded most planetary networks. Its hull was a patchwork of conquered species innovations, Romulan cloaking components, Klingon weapon arrays, Federation shield emitters, all integrated into the collective singular purpose. On DS9's operations center, every alarm system activated simultaneously. Cisco bolted from his office as the red alert klaxons blared, his mind already calculating impossible odds and desperate strategies. Report, he barked, taking his command position. Daxa's hands flew across her science console, her 3 centuries of Trill experience evident in how quickly she assessed the tactical nightmare. Borg cube, bearing 317 Mark 8. Distance, 96 billion kilometers and closing at warp 6. They're on a direct intercept course with the Infinity. Not with us. Kira asked, surprised and troubled in equal measure. They're ignoring the station. The Borg prioritize unique technology, Dax explained, her voice tight. The Infinity represents completely novel propulsion systems, weapon designs, and computer architecture. They want it. All of it. O'Brien was already rerouting power to weapons and shields, his engineering instincts moving faster than conscious thought. We can't fight a cube. The Defiant maybe, could survive long enough to evacuate the station, but a cube would tear through us like tissue paper. Sisko opened a channel to the Infinity. Captain Lasky, you have incoming. We see it, Captain Sisko. Lasky's voice carried the forced calm of someone confronting nightmare scenarios. Roland's identifying it as a Borg vessel based on your database entries. Cybernetic collective consciousness, assimilation-driven expansion, adaptive shielding. Threat assessment, extreme. That's an understatement, Sisko replied grimly. The Borg don't negotiate, don't retreat, and don't stop until they've assimilated what they want or been destroyed. You need to evacuate your ship immediately. We can provide emergency transport. Negative, Captain. The Master Chief's voice cut through the channel. The UNSC doesn't abandon ships to hostile forces. Particularly not to an enemy that would assimilate our technology and use it against humanity. Chief, Sisko said, forcing patience into his tone, the Borg have assimilated hundreds of species. They've defeated entire fleets. One ship, even one as powerful as the Infinity, cannot win against a cube. Then we'll see what happens when an irresistible force meets an immovable object. The chief's statement wasn't bravado, it was tactical assessment delivered with Spartan fatalism. Captain Lasky, recommend we evacuate non-essential personnel to Deep Space Nine and prepare for full defensive operations. Agreed, Lasky said. Roland, initiate evacuation protocols. All civilians, medical staff, and non-combat personnel to the Pelican Bays. Marines and Spartan teams prepare for boarding defense. Weapons free on all systems. On the view screen, the Borg cube continued its relentless approach, its green energy fields pulsing with the collective consciousness of thousands of minds linked in singular purpose. Then it transmitted, not through standard communication frequencies, but through every speaker, every console, every system capable of producing sound aboard both DS9 and the Infinity simultaneously. We are the Borg. Your biological and technological distinctiveness will be added to our own. Resistance is futile. The words were declarative, inevitable, carrying the weight of civilizations consumed and species erased. But the Master Chief's response came immediately, transmitted on all frequencies with digital clarity. This is Master Chief Petty Officer John 117, UNSC Navy. You are engaged with military forces that have survived 30 years of existential warfare. We fought species that sought our extermination, rebuilt from near extinction, and adapted to threats you've never encountered. You will not assimilate this ship. You will not assimilate these soldiers. And if you attempt it, you will learn why the Covenant failed. For exactly 2.3 seconds, the Borg cube's transmission went silent, processing, analyzing, calculating threat assessment against unexpected resistance. Then. Your confidence is irrelevant. Adaptation is inevitable. We will add your tactical knowledge, your weapon systems, and your cybernetic soldiers to the collective. You will be improved. We were improved, the chief replied, and something in his voice made even Sisko's blood run cold. It killed half of us. The rest of us learned to kill anything that threatens humanity's survival. You're about to become a tactical exercise. The Borg cube opened fire. 27 cutting beams, focused energy weapons designed to slice through shields and hull armor like surgical instruments, converged on the Infinity from multiple angles. The UNSC ship's Forerunner-derived shields flared brilliant cyan as they absorbed the initial assault, energy discharging in cascading patterns that lit up the visible spectrum. For 3 seconds, the shields held. Then they collapsed under sustained bombardment, and the cutting beams began carving through the Infinity's titanium, A3 armor plating. Return fire, Lasky ordered. All weapons. Show these things what kinetic weapons do to their adaptive shielding. The Infinity's response was apocalyptic. Every MAC gun, every Archer missile pod, every point defense system opened fire simultaneously. The primary Super MAC, a weapon capable of accelerating 3,000-ton projectiles to 4% light speed, discharged with enough electromagnetic force to dim the Infinity's reactor output by 15%. The round hit the Borg cube center mass, and for the first time in recorded history, Borg adaptive shielding encountered something it couldn't modulate against: pure kinetic energy delivered with overwhelming force. The shields flared, attempting to dissipate impact energy through frequency rotation and power redistribution. But kinetic energy wasn't a frequency, it was mass times velocity, and the mathematics were unforgiving. The Super MAC round punched through the shields, cored through 600 meters of assimilated hull plating, and exited through the opposite side in a spray of debris and depressurized drones. On DS9, O'Brien's jaw dropped. Holy Mother of God! They just put a hole through a Borg cube. But the Borg, as always, adapted. The cube's self-repair systems activated immediately, nanoprobes sealing the wound with assimilated materials while the collective analyzed the attack vector. Within 30 seconds, the Borg had modulated their shield specifically for kinetic impacts, not perfect defense, but enough to reduce effectiveness. The second MAC round hit with reduced penetration, detonating against reinforced shielding instead of coring completely through. The Borg were learning. Roland, Lasky said, analysis. How long before they fully adapt to our weapons? The AI's response came instantly, his usual sardonic tone replaced with tactical urgency. Conventional kinetic weapons, 3 to 4 additional impacts. Energy projectors, unknown, their shields aren't designed for Forerunner particle physics. Recommend alternating weapon systems to delay full adaptation. On the view screen, the Borg cube launched its own assault craft, dozens of smaller cubes, each one a self-contained assimilation platform carrying hundreds of drones. They moved with insect-like precision, swarming toward the Infinity's hull breaches created by the cutting beams. The Master Chief watched the tactical display from the Infinity's bridge, his augmented mind processing threat vectors and defensive options with computer-assisted speed. Captain, the Borg are attempting boarding actions. Recommend deploying Spartan 4 teams to breach points N. Negative, Chief, Lasky interrupted. You're going to lead the defense personally. If the Borg manage to assimilate even one Spartan, they'll gain access to Mjolnir specifications, augmentation procedures, and tactical doctrine. We can't allow that. Understood. The Chief turned toward the exit, then paused. Captain, if they breach the bridge and threaten ship security. Cole Protocol is authorized, Lasky said quietly. If it comes to that, you'll know when. The Chief nodded once, a soldier acknowledging orders he hoped never to execute, and disappeared into the corridor at full sprint. Behind him, Fireteam Majestic and 3 full companies of Spartan I versus were already deploying to defensive positions throughout the ship. The first Borg boarding craft attached to the Infinity's hull near the primary hangar bay with magnetic clamps that bit into the damaged armor. Plasma cutters began carving through the weakened plating, and within 45 seconds, the breach was complete. Drones poured through, pale humanoids with cybernetic implants crawling across their skin like technological infection. Their eyes glowed with the eerie green phosphorescence of active nanoprobes, and their movements carried the unsettling efficiency of beings who shared a single distributed consciousness. They found themselves facing a defensive position that would have impressed even the Covenant's most paranoid military architects. The Marines had established overlapping fields of fire, with automated turrets covering approach vectors and portable shields creating choke points. When the Borg drones attempted to advance, the UNSC opened fire with devastating coordination. MA-5D assault rifles barked in staccato rhythm, and armor-piercing rounds tore through drones with brutal efficiency. The Borg's personal shields, designed to adapt to energy weapons, struggled against kinetic projectiles that operated on entirely different principles. Drones fell, their cybernetic enhancement sparking as critical systems failed. But the Borg, as always, adapted. The second wave of drones carried physical shields, assimilated Klingon armor plating integrated into their bodies. They advanced behind these barriers, and their own weapons, assimilating tubules and energy projectors, began taking marine lives. Then the Master Chief arrived. He hit the Borg formation like a meteor, his Mjolnir armor's enhanced strength allowing him to physically throw drones through bulkheads. His MA-5D blazed with controlled bursts, each round finding critical systems identified through his HUD's tactical analysis. A Borg drone reached for him with assimilation tubules extended, and the chief grabbed its arm, twisted with servo-assisted torque, and used the drone as a battering ram against 3 more. The Borg collective immediately recognized the threat. 15 drones converged on the chief's position, attempting to overwhelm through numerical superiority. But the chief had fought the Flood, an enemy that operated on similar swarm tactics, and he'd learned to turn confined spaces into killing grounds. He moved through the boarding party with lethal efficiency, using every environmental advantage. A drone stumbled over debris the chief had deliberately kicked into its path. Another was crushed when the chief triggered an emergency bulkhead closure. 3 more fell to precision shots that exploited gaps in their adapted shielding. Across the ship, Spartan 4 teams replicated the chief's success. Palmer's fire team held the engineering section against 200 drones, their coordination and tactical adaptability outpacing the Borg's collective processing. DeMarco defended the medical bay by collapsing a corridor and forcing the Borg through a single choke point. Tanaka rigged improvised EMPs from the Infinity's power conduits, disrupting drone cybernetics and creating momentary vulnerabilities. But aboard the Borg cube, the collective was analyzing, learning, evolving strategies in real time. The drones began adapting not just to UNSC weapons, but to UNSC tactics. They stopped using predictable assault patterns. They started using cover. They began targeting UNSC communication systems to disrupt coordination. On DS9, Daxa's sensors tracked the escalating battle with growing dread. Benjamin, the Borg are learning. They're incorporating UNSC tactical doctrine into their assault algorithms. If this continues, they'll eventually overwhelm the Infinity through sheer adaptive capability. Sisko made a decision. Major Kira, power up the Defiant. We're joining this fight. Captain, O'Brien protested, the Defiant can't stand up to a cube. We'll be assimilated in minutes. We don't need to destroy it, Sisko countered. We need to buy the Infinity time to evacuate and implement whatever desperate plan Captain Lasky is developing. Chief, get that ship ready. We launch in 5 minutes. As the Defiant systems powered up and DS9 began launching its own defensive fighters, the Master Chief fought his way toward the Infinity's reactor core, where a specialized Borg assault team was attempting to access the ship's power systems. These weren't standard drones. These were tactical drones, heavily armored, carrying advanced weapons, and moving with precision that suggested direct oversight from the Borg Queen herself. They'd bypassed the Marines, avoided the Spartan defensive lines, and accessed maintenance conduits that led directly to critical systems. The chief intercepted them 30 meters from the reactor. All hands, this is Sierra 117. Borg team approaching reactor core. If they breach containment, the resulting explosion will destroy everything within 500 kilometers. I'm engaging. What followed was close-quarters battle at its most brutal. The chief couldn't use explosives, too close to the reactor. He couldn't rely on long-range weapons, the corridors were too tight. This was knife work, hand-to-hand combat against enemies who felt no pain and adapted to every attack pattern. The chief killed the first tactical drone with his combat knife driven through its optical sensor into its primary cortical processor. The second fell when the chief used his armor's enhanced strength to literally tear its cybernetic spine from its body. The third managed to inject assimilation tubules into the chief's armor, and for 3 terrifying seconds, nanoprobes attempted to breach Mjolnir's biosafety seals. The armor's internal defenses activated, UV sterilization, electromagnetic pulses, and chemical countermeasures that the UNSC had developed after studying flood infection vectors. The nanoprobes died before reaching the chief's skin, but the close call transmitted through the collective's consciousness. The Borg Queen, distant but aware, recognized the danger. These Spartans were not just warriors, they were walking anti-assimilation platforms, their armor and augmentation specifically designed to resist biological and technological contamination. A new transmission blanketed all frequencies, the Queen's voice carrying cold calculation. UNSC Spartans. Your resistance is impressive. Inefficient, but impressive. We offer terms: surrender your vessel and technology. In exchange, we will not assimilate your biological components. You will be preserved as curiosities. A species too adapted for warfare to integrate smoothly. The Master Chief, standing in a corridor filled with destroyed tactical drones, his armor scorched and his shields depleted, transmitted his response. We've received surrender offers before. From the Covenant, from insurrectionists, from every enemy that thought overwhelming force guaranteed victory. Our answer hasn't changed: no. We fight until we win, or we fight until we die. There is no third option. The Borg Queen processed this, her ancient intelligence recognizing something it had rarely encountered, a species so fundamentally militarized that even the promise of preservation couldn't override their combat doctrine. Then, the Queen said with something approaching regret, "You will be destroyed. And we will study your remains." The Borg cube began charging its primary weapon, a cutting beam powerful enough to slice the Infinity in half with a single sustained burst. And aboard the UNSC vessel, Captain Lasky looked at his bridge crew and spoke the words every UNSC commander dreaded: activate Cole Protocol. Prepare to self-destruct the ship. The Cole Protocol had been written in blood during the earliest days of the Human Covenant War, when UNSC ships fell to overwhelming Covenant forces and their navigation databases led the enemy to Earth's location. The protocol was simple, absolute, and unforgiving: before allowing capture, destroy everything: ship, crew, data, technology, leaving nothing for the enemy to exploit. Captain Thomas Lasky stood on the Infinity's bridge, his hand hovering over the biometric scanner that would begin the irreversible self-destruct sequence. Around him, his bridge crew maintained their posts with the stoic professionalism of people who'd accepted death as a possibility the moment they joined the UNSC. "Roland," Lasky said quietly, "status on evacuation." The AI's avatar flickered on the holographic display, a young man in naval dress uniform, his expression carrying none of his usual sardonic humor. 83% of non-essential personnel evacuated to Deep Space Nine. Remaining personnel are combat staff, Spartans, and engineering teams maintaining reactor stability. "Captain, if we detonate the fusion reactors, the blast radius will encompass DS-9. We're too close." "Then we move the ship," Lasky replied. "Helm, full impulse away from the station. Put us between DS-9 and that cube. If we're going out, we're taking as much of it with us as possible." "Captain," the helmsman, Lieutenant Orson, protested, "moving closer to the Borg cube accelerates their ability to board us. We'll be overrun before the self-destruct completes." "I know." Lasky's voice was steady, the acceptance of a commander who'd made peace with impossible choices. "But 1,700 civilians on DS-9 don't deserve to die because we couldn't buy them time to evacuate. Set course, maximum velocity." The Infinity's massive engines flared, pushing the supercarrier toward the Borg cube at full impulse while Borg boarding craft continued their relentless assault. Throughout the ship, Marines and Spartans fought desperate defensive actions against an enemy that adapted with every passing moment. On Deep Space Nine, Captain Sisko watched the Infinity's trajectory with dawning horror. They're going to ram the cube. Sacrifice themselves to destroy it. Or they're positioning for self-destruct, Dax said, her science officer's mind calculating blast radiuses and casualty projections. Benjamin, if the Infinity's fusion reactors go critical at that distance, the explosion will vaporize the cube but also damage DS9. We need to evacuate the station. We don't have time. Kira snapped, pulling up evacuation logistics. 1,700 people, limited transport capacity, and the Infinity is closing on the cube at full impulse. We'd need 30 minutes minimum. Then we make time, Cisco interrupted, his command presence overriding panic. Chief, reroute all available power to shields and structural integrity. Dax, calculate minimum safe distance and transmit to Lasky. Kira, begin emergency evacuation, priority to civilians and non-combat personnel. And someone get me the Defiant status. The Defiant, DS9's dedicated warship, a tough little ship designed to fight the Borg, was already powering up under O'Brien's frantic supervision. Its quantum torpedoes and pulse phasers represented the Federation's best anti-Borg technology, but against a full cube, it would be a mosquito attacking an elephant. Defiant is ready, O'Brien reported, but Captain, even with our ablative armor and rotating shield frequencies, we can't hold that cube's attention for more than a few minutes. A few minutes might be all we need, Cisco said, heading for the docking port. I'm taking command. Major, you have ops. Aboard the Infinity, the Master Chief fought through a corridor now completely overrun with Borg drones. His shields were gone, his armor's left pauldron torn away by a Borg cutting beam, and his MA-5D's ammunition counter read 32 rounds remaining. Behind him, the reactor core's blast doors represented the last barrier between the Borg and catastrophic systems access. Chief. Palmer's voice crackled through his compromised comm system. Engineering section is being overrun. We've lost decks 8 through 12. The Borg have assimilated Lieutenant Chen and half the medical staff. They're using UNSC medical knowledge to target our weak points. The chief processed this, his tactical mind calculating the inevitable conclusion. Once the Borg assimilated enough crew members, they'd gain access to Infinity's security protocols, reactor control systems, and worst of all, Spartan augmentation specifications. Every second they remained aboard accelerated that outcome. All Spartan teams, the chief transmitted, fall back to the bridge. We're consolidating defensive positions and preparing for final stand protocols. Chief, DeMarco responded, his voice strained, if we abandon these sections, the Borg will have unrestricted access to. Irrelevant, the chief interrupted. Captain Lasky has authorized Cole Protocol. We're holding long enough for evacuation completion, then the ship self-destructs. All personnel fall back. That's an order. The Spartan Iversus acknowledged and began fighting retreats toward the bridge, each step purchased with Borg casualties but inevitably yielding ground. The collective's tactical efficiency was overwhelming. For every drone destroyed, 2 more adapted the strategy that killed it. The UNSC's advantage through superior training and equipment was being systematically eroded. The chief reached the bridge to find Captain Lasky standing at the self-destruct console, both hands now placed on the biometric scanners. Around him, the bridge crew maintained their posts despite the sounds of combat echoing through nearby corridors. Chief, Lasky acknowledged without looking up. Status? All Spartan teams converging on the bridge. Estimated 3 minutes until Borg breached this position. Recommendation, complete evacuation immediately and execute Cole Protocol. Not yet. Lasky's jaw was tight. DS9 is still evacuating civilians. We buy them every second we can. The chief moved to the tactical station, pulling up the Infinity's self-destruct parameters. The system required 3 command-level authorizations, Captain, Executive Officer, and AI confirmation. The countdown, once initiated, would run for 5 minutes, enough time for remaining crew to reach escape pods, not enough time for the Borg to disable the sequence. Captain, Roland's avatar appeared beside Lasky, his digital expression carrying something that looked like genuine concern. I need to inform you of a complication. When the self-destruct activates, my matrix will be purged along with all ship systems. As a smart AI, my rampancy clock means I have approximately 4 years before cognitive degradation. But if we survive this somehow, I'd prefer to see those years. Lasky looked at his AI, the synthetic consciousness that had served the Infinity since its commissioning, that had calculated jump coordinates, managed tactical operations, and provided companionship during the loneliest watches. Roland, if there was any way to preserve you. There might be, Dax's voice interrupted through an emergency channel. Captain Lasky, this is Lieutenant Commander Dax on DS9. I've been monitoring your AI's transmissions. Federation systems can host AI matrices temporarily, not permanently, but long enough to potentially preserve his consciousness during the self-destruct. I can set up a receiver, but I'd need him to transmit his core programming immediately. Roland's avatar turned toward the communication channel. Commander, UNSC smart AIs are significantly more complex than Federation computer systems. My neural architecture alone would overwhelm your processing capacity. Let me worry about that, Dax replied with the confidence of someone who'd been a scientist for 3 centuries. Transmit your matrix. Now. Lasky nodded. Do it, Roland. That's an order. Yes, sir. The AI's avatar flickered. Beginning transmission. Captain, it's been an honor serving with. The transmission cut as Roland's consciousness fragmented into data streams, flooding through subspace channels toward Deep Space Nine's computer core. The Infinity's bridge systems immediately degraded, automated functions failed, tactical displays went dark, and navigation became purely manual. We're flying blind, the helmsman reported. Without Roland, we're still UNSC, Lasky interrupted. We've fought without AI support before. Maintain course toward the cube. Weapons, continue firing all systems, keep them distracted from DS9. On the view screen, the Defiant streaked past the Infinity on an attack run that seemed suicidal even by Starfleet standards. Its quantum torpedoes hammered the Borg cube's already damaged sections while pulse phasers carved scoring marks across assimilated hull plating. The cube's response was immediate. Cutting beams swiveled to track the smaller vessel, and the Defiant barely escaped vaporization through aggressive evasive maneuvers. Defiant to Infinity, Sisko's voice transmitted, we're drawing their fire. Make your evacuation count. The Master Chief watched the Federation ship's desperate attack run and recognized the tactic, sacrifice positioning to buy time for others. It was the same doctrine that had defined Spartan operations for decades, hold the line, regardless of cost, because someone had to. Captain, the chief said quietly, the Borg will adapt to the Defiant's weapons in approximately 90 seconds. After that, Captain Sisko's ship will be destroyed. We're out of time. Lasky looked at the evacuation status, 91% complete. 143 personnel still aboard, mostly Spartans who'd stayed to hold defensive positions. The mathematics were clear. Finish evacuation and risk the Borg capturing the ship, or execute Cole Protocol now and kill everyone still aboard. Command decisions. The kind that defined careers and haunted consciences. Then Palmer's voice cut through the bridge speakers, strained but determined, Captain, this is Commander Palmer. Spartan 4 teams are holding the final defensive perimeter. All personnel who could evacuate have evacuated. Everyone still aboard knows what's coming. We're ready. Lasky's hand trembled, just once, just for a moment, before steadying with military discipline. All hands, this is the captain. Cole Protocol is now active. Self-destruct sequence in 5 minutes. If you can reach escape pods, do so immediately. If you can't. His voice caught. It's been an honor serving with you. Lasky out. He placed both hands on the biometric scanners. The system required 3 confirmations. Captain Thomas Lasky, authorization Alpha 779er. Cole Protocol authorized. The executive officer, Commander Palmer, transmitting from her defensive position 3 decks below, added her authorization, Commander Sarah Palmer, authorization Delta 336. Cole protocol confirmed. The final authorization required Roland, but the AI was gone, his consciousness fragmented across subspace transmission to DS9. The chief stepped forward without hesitation. Master Chief Petty Officer John 117, Emergency Command Authorization Sierra 117. Cole protocol confirmed. The computer accepted the authorization. Throughout the Infinity, klaxons began blaring in patterns every UNSC crew member recognized, 5 minutes to total destruction. Failsafes disengaged. Fusion reactor containment fields began their controlled degradation. There was no stopping it now. The chief opened a channel to all Spartan teams. All personnel, this is Sierra 117. Proceed to nearest escape pods immediately. That's a direct order. Palmer's response came through the chaos of combat. Negative, Chief. Spartan 4 teams are buying time for remaining crew to escape. We hold the line. It's what we do. Commander. With respect, Chief, you don't get to order us to abandon the mission. Some of us aren't making it to escape pods anyway. So we're going to do what Spartans do, finish the fight. The chief understood. He'd made the same calculation 100 times, tactical necessity overriding survival instinct. Some battles required sacrifices. Understood, Commander. Spartans never die. They're just missing in action, Palmer finished. See you on the other side, Chief. The transmission ended. Across the Infinity, Spartan Iverses held their positions against the Borg tide, buying precious seconds for Marines and crew to reach escape pods. Their sacrifice was measured in lives saved, in time purchased, in enemies destroyed before the inevitable end. On Deep Space Nine, Dax's science station erupted with alerts as Roland's consciousness bombarded the station's computer core. The AI's neural architecture was overwhelming Federation systems, threatening cascade failures across multiple networks. I can't contain him. Dax shouted. His processing demands are too complex, he's going to crash our entire computer network. O'Brien sprinted from his engineering station, his hands flying across override controls. Reroute him to the backup systems. Use the Defiance computer core as supplementary processing, combine both systems to handle the load. That'll give us maybe 90 seconds before both systems overload, Dax protested. Then we have 90 seconds, O'Brien replied grimly. Do it. Data streams merged, Federation and UNSC technologies interfacing in ways their designers never intended. Roland's consciousness stabilized, his fragmented matrix coalescing in the alien architecture of Deep Space Nine systems. His avatar appeared on multiple displays simultaneously, flickering, glitching, but present. I'm here. Roland's voice carried digital distortion. Commander Dax, your systems are primitive but functional. This is uncomfortable. You're alive, Dax said. That's what matters. The Infinity. 3 minutes to detonation, O'Brien reported. All escape pods launched. The ship's on automatic course toward the cube. On the view screen, the Infinity accelerated toward the Borg cube with the inevitability of an avalanche. The cube attempted to destroy the incoming vessel with sustained cutting beam fire, but its weapons carved through already dying systems. Nothing could stop the supercarrier's momentum now. The Borg collective recognized the threat. Every drone aboard the Infinity received simultaneous orders: abandon ship immediately. Transport back to the cube. Preserve acquired knowledge at all costs. Borg beaming technology activated across the Infinity, green energy fields enveloping drones and transporting them back to the cube. But the chief and the remaining Spartans had one final move. They'd rigged every Borg corpse in their defensive sectors with plasma grenades set to proximity detonation. When the Borg beamed their drones back, they brought explosive presents. Detonations rippled through the cube's interior as hundreds of plasma grenades activated simultaneously, destroying assimilated systems and killing drones by the thousands. The collective's coordination stuttered, not destroyed, but disrupted long enough to matter. The Master Chief reached the escape pod with Lasky beside him, both men taking one last look at the Infinity's bridge. Cole Protocol was designed for this, the Chief said quietly. Better to die than let them use our technology against us. I know, Lasky replied. Doesn't make it easier. They sealed the escape pod and launched, joining dozens of others fleeing the dying ship. Behind them, the Infinity closed the final 1,000 kilometers to the Borg cube, its reactors hitting critical mass. The explosion, when it came, rewrote the definition of naval warfare for every species monitoring the battle. For fusion reactors detonating simultaneously created a miniature star, temperatures exceeding 15 million degrees, energy output measured in exotons, a blast wave that vaporized everything within 2,000 kilometers. The Borg cube, caught at point-blank range, ceased to exist. Its shields managed to absorb approximately 0.003 seconds of the detonation before catastrophic failure. The cube structure, composed of assimilated materials from 100 species, turned to plasma. 129,000 drones, each one a assimilated individual with memories and histories now lost, were annihilated in an instant. The shockwave hit Deep Space Nine with enough force to overload shields and buckle 3 structural support pylons. Emergency force fields snapped into place across dozens of hull breaches, and the station's position-keeping thrusters fired at maximum to prevent uncontrolled spin. When the sensors cleared, the battle was over. The Infinity was gone. The Borg cube was gone. And scattered across local space, dozens of UNSC escape pods transmitted emergency beacons. In ops, Sisko slumped in his command chair, exhausted and grieving for a ship he'd barely known. Begin rescue operations. Recover all escape pods. And someone find out if Captain Lasky survived. Kira's console chimed with incoming signals. Captain, we're receiving transmissions from the Klingon fleet. They watched the entire battle from long-range sensors. Commander Koloth is requesting permission to honor the Infinity's sacrifice. He wants to hold some kind of ceremony. Later, Sisko said. First, we save who we can. The Master Chief's escape pod was among the first recovered, mag-locked to DS-9's docking port by tractor beam. When the Spartan emerged, his armor was scorched and damaged, but he stood with the same rigid discipline as when he'd first arrived. Captain Lasky, the Chief asked immediately. Alive, Kira reported. His pod is incoming. Chief. I'm sorry about your ship. The Chief was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of countless losses. Ships can be rebuilt. Crew can't. We saved who we could. That's the mission. It was the most human thing Sisko had heard the Spartan say. And somehow, it made the loss hurt more. The wardroom aboard Deep Space Nine had become a makeshift memorial, though no one had officially designated it as such. Captain Lasky sat at the head of the conference table, datapad in hand, reviewing casualty reports with the mechanical precision of someone who couldn't afford to process grief yet. Across from him, the Master Chief stood in damaged armor, refusing offers to sit despite having been in continuous combat for 18 hours. Captain Sisko entered quietly, carrying 2 cups of Raktajino, Klingon coffee, strong enough to wake the dead. He placed one in front of Lasky, who accepted it with a nod of exhausted gratitude. Final count? Sisko asked gently. Lasky's voice was hoarse. 143 dead. Most of them Spartan Iverses who held defensive positions to the end. Commander Palmer survived. Her escape pod was one of the last to launch. We recovered 17,200 personnel total. Out of 17,543. The mathematics of sacrifice. 343 lives lost, but 17,000 saved. By military standards, it was a victory. By human standards, it was a tragedy. Your ship gave us time to evacuate the station, Sisko said. 3,000 civilians made it off DS9 before the blast wave hit. Your people saved them. Cold comfort to the families who won't see their loved ones again, Lasky replied, but without bitterness, just the flat acknowledgement of someone who delivered too many death notifications. He looked at the chief. John, you should be in medical. Dr. Bashir says you have 3 cracked ribs, a concussion, and second-degree burns across 15% of your body. I've had worse, the chief replied, which Sisko was beginning to realize was the Spartan equivalent of, I'm fine. The door chimed, and Commander Palmer entered, her armor replaced with standard UNSC fatigues. Her right arm was in a regenerative cast, courtesy of Federation medical technology, but her bearing remained military sharp. She saluted Lasky, then the chief. Sir, Chief. I've compiled combat reports from all surviving Spartan 4 personnel. The Borg adapted faster than any enemy we've encountered, faster than the Flood, faster than Prometheans. If that engagement had lasted another 10 minutes, they would have overwhelmed us completely. But they didn't, the chief said. Because you held the line. Palmer's expression flickered with something that might have been pride or grief, or both. 37 Spartan Iverses didn't make it to escape pods. They knew they wouldn't. They stayed anyway because that's what we do. The room fell silent, each person processing loss in their own way. Then Dax's voice interrupted through the comm system, Captain Sisko, you need to come to ops. We have visitors. The tone in her voice suggested this wasn't a social call. They found ops crowded with unexpected arrivals. Commander Koloth stood with a dozen Klingon warriors, all carrying bottles of blood wine and ceremonial batleths. Beside them, and this was the truly surprising part, a Romulan delegation led by Commander Torith had materialized via transporter, their expressions carefully neutral. Even Weyoun had appeared, his Vorta diplomatic smile firmly in place despite the inherent tension. Captain Sisko, Koloth boomed, his voice carrying genuine respect rather than his usual aggressive bluster, we have come to honor the fallen. The Infinity's sacrifice will be recorded in Klingon history as one of the greatest warrior deaths in this age. To face the Borg, the enemy that has humiliated the Empire repeatedly, and destroy them through sheer will and firepower. That is glory worthy of song. Torith stepped forward with measured grace. The Romulan Star Empire also acknowledges the Infinity's tactical effectiveness. While we regret the loss of such advanced technology, we recognize that Captain Lasky's decision prevented Borg acquisition of UNSC innovations. A logical choice, if tragic. Weyoun's contribution was more calculated. The Dominion extends its condolences. We had hoped to forge alliance with the UNSC, but we respect their willingness to choose destruction over subjugation. It's familiar. We Vorta understand serving a cause greater than individual survival. Lasky looked at the assembled representatives of Alpha Quadrant powers, enemies and allies united briefly by recognition of sacrifice, and something in his exhausted expression hardened. With respect to all of you, we didn't destroy the Infinity for glory, or logic, or cause. We destroyed it because the alternative was letting the Borg use our technology to assimilate entire civilizations. That wasn't sacrifice for abstract principles. That was tactical necessity. And yet, Koloth countered, you could have surrendered. Offered the Borg your technology in exchange for your lives. Many species have chosen survival over honor. You chose differently. Because we've seen what happens when you negotiate with enemies who view you as resources, the Master Chief interjected, his voice carrying absolute certainty. The Covenant offered humanity surrender terms, accept their religion, abandon our worlds, become client species under their authority. We refused. 23 billion people died in the war that followed. But humanity survived as humanity, not as conquered subjects, not as assimilated drones. That's worth any cost. Weyoun tilted his head, genuinely curious. But surely, Master Chief, there's wisdom in accepting hierarchy when resistance means extinction. The founders offer order, purpose, belonging. Why is independence worth billions of deaths? The chief turned to face the Vorta directly, and even without seeing his face, Sisko felt the intensity radiating through the armor. Because the moment you accept that some species are inherently superior to others, you've already lost everything that makes existence meaningful. The Covenant believed the prophets were divine. The Borg believe perfection justifies forced assimilation. The Dominion believes the founders are gods. You're all wrong. And we'll keep fighting every enemy that tries to impose that philosophy until we win, or until we're dead. There is no third option. The silence that followed was profound. Even Weyoun seemed momentarily at a loss for words, a rare occurrence for a Vorta diplomat. Torith broke the silence with clinical observation. Your species is dangerously idealistic. Also dangerously effective. The Romulan Empire has been reconsidering its initial assessment. Perhaps the UNSC represents not an opportunity for technological acquisition, but a potential long-term strategic partner. Assuming you survive in this reality long enough to matter. About that, Dax interjected, pulling up holographic displays showing spatial analysis data. I've been analyzing the subspace fracture that brought the Infinity here. The good news, I think I can recreate the conditions that caused the dimensional breach. The bad news, it requires the exact quantum signature of your slipspace drive at the moment of malfunction, precise positioning relative to the Bajoran wormhole's unique properties, and energy output equivalent to a warp core breach. Lasky leaned forward, hope warring with caution in his expression. You're saying you can send us home? I'm saying it's theoretically possible, Dax clarified. But the probability of success is approximately 37%. There's a 22% chance the attempt kills everyone involved, a 33% chance it does nothing, and an 8% chance it creates a permanent rift between realities that destabilizes both universes. Unacceptable risk, Lasky said immediately. We're not gambling with both realities because we want to go home. Captain, Palmer protested, with respect, we have 17,000 displaced personnel with no clear mission or purpose in this reality. We're stranded in someone else's war with someone else's enemy. Don't we owe it to the crew to at least try? Not at the cost of potentially destroying two universes, Lasky replied firmly. Commander, I want to go home as much as anyone. But the UNSC doesn't gamble with extinction-level consequences. We find another way. The chief spoke quietly, or we adapt. It wouldn't be the first time humanity survived by learning to thrive in hostile circumstances. Sisko watched the UNSC officers process their impossible situation, stranded in an alternate reality, their ship destroyed, surrounded by factions who viewed them as threats, assets, or opportunities. The Federation's founding principle was providing sanctuary for those seeking refuge. But the UNSC represented something more complicated, a military force without a government, possessing advanced technology, and carrying combat doctrine that challenged Federation idealism. Captain Lasky, Sisko said, making a decision that would probably require approval from Starfleet Command and potentially the Federation Council, I'm offering the UNSC Provisional Alliance with the United Federation of Planets. We provide asylum, resources for establishing a base of operations, and support in analyzing methods to return you to your reality. In exchange, you respect Federation law, avoid destabilizing our conflicts, and share tactical knowledge about the Borg, what worked, what didn't, how they adapt. You want us to train your people, the chief observed. I want you to help us survive, Sisko corrected. The Borg have defeated us repeatedly. You destroyed a cube at cost of one ship, terrible cost, but you did it. That knowledge could save millions of lives. Koloth slammed his fist on the nearest console, a gesture that made everyone jump. The Federation offers words and resources. The Klingon Empire offers brotherhood in battle. Captain Lasky, join our forces. Let UNSC warriors fight alongside Klingon warriors. Together, we'll crush the Dominion and any other enemy who dares challenge us. The Romulan Empire, Torith interjected smoothly, offers something neither the Federation nor the Klingon can match, practical self-interest. We recognize you need allies who won't burden you with moral restrictions or expectations of glorious death. We offer technology exchange, intelligence cooperation, and strategic partnership without demands of ideological conformity. Weyoun added his own proposal with calculated timing, and the Dominion reiterates its offer. Help us establish order in the Alpha Quadrant, and we'll provide resources toward returning you home. The Founders have access to spatial phenomena research spanning multiple realities. We can help you, if you help us. Lasky looked at each representative in turn, then at his surviving officers. Palmer stood ready to follow whatever decision he made. The chief remained perfectly still, a soldier awaiting orders. And scattered throughout DS9, 17,000 UNSC personnel waited to learn their fate. Thank you all for your offers, Lasky said finally. But before the UNSC commits to any alliance, I need to consult with my crew, analyze our options, and understand the full implications of each choice. We've been in this reality less than a week. Making strategic decisions that affect 17,000 lives requires more than instinct. Wise, Torith acknowledged. The Romulan Empire appreciates measured consideration. We'll await your decision. As will the Empire, Koloth agreed. But Captain, don't wait too long. Wars are won by those who act decisively. Weyoun simply smiled. The Dominion is patient. We'll be here when you're ready to choose the winning side. As the various delegations departed, Klingon with ceremonial respect, Romulans with calculated courtesy, Weyoun with unsettling confidence, Sisko found himself alone with Lasky and the chief in the now quiet wardroom. You realize, Sisko said quietly, that your presence has already changed the balance of power in this quadrant. Every faction now sees the UNSC as a strategic asset worth acquiring. You're not going to get the luxury of remaining neutral. I know, Lasky replied wearily. The UNSC learned that lesson during the insurrection. You can't stay neutral when everyone around you is choosing sides. Eventually, neutrality becomes a side of its own. The chief moved to the viewport, looking out at the debris field where the Infinity had died. Captain, recommend we establish protocols immediately. Secure all surviving UNSC technology, implement information security measures, and begin tactical training with allied forces, assuming we choose allies. We're vulnerable right now. Scattered, displaced, grieving. That's when enemies strike. Agreed, Lasky said. But first, we honor the dead. The UNSC has traditions for that. Captain Sisko, would Deep Space Nine's chapel be available for a memorial service? Of course, Sisko replied. And Captain, for what it's worth, the Federation doesn't view you as assets or opportunities. We view you as people who sacrificed everything to protect others. That matters to us. Lasky's expression softened slightly. Thank you. That actually does help. As Sisko left to arrange the memorial service, he passed Commander Palmer in the corridor. She was carrying a data chip, standard UNSC format, physically isolated from networked systems. Commander, Sisko said, heading somewhere. Palmer hesitated, then decided on honesty. To the Defiant. Chief wants me to download all tactical data from the Borg engagement onto isolated systems, everything we learned, every adaptation they made, every weakness we exploited. He's concerned that if any faction gets access to DS9's computer systems, they might steal that information. He's not wrong, Sisko admitted. Your tactical knowledge is valuable. But Palmer, the Federation isn't going to steal from you. If you share that information, it'll be because you chose to share it. I know, Palmer said. The chief knows too. But UNSC doctrine is clear, trust is earned through actions, not promises. No offense, Captain, but you're asking us to trust a Federation we've known for less than a week with tactical information that cost 143 lives to acquire. That's difficult. Sisko understood. Trust, especially for a military culture forged through existential warfare, wasn't given freely. It was earned through shared sacrifice, proven reliability, and time. The UNSC had none of those assurances yet. Then earn our trust, Sisko suggested. Share what you're comfortable sharing. We'll prove ourselves worthy of more. That's how alliances are built, not through grand gestures, but through small acts of faith that accumulate into something larger. Palmer considered this, then nodded slowly. That's actually good advice. I'll discuss it with Captain Lasky and the Chief. As she continued toward the Defiant, Sisko returned to Ops, where Kira was coordinating repair efforts and Dax was still analyzing dimensional mechanics. The station hummed with activity, repairs, evacuations returning, and the constant background noise of a border outpost that never truly rested. Benjamin, Dax said without looking up from her console, I've been thinking about the UNSC situation. They're displaced, vulnerable, and attractive to every major power in the quadrant. But they're also dangerously capable. If they ally with the wrong faction, they could tip the balance of the entire war, Sisko finished. I know. That's why we need to make sure they understand what the Federation stands for, not through speeches or idealism, but through actions that demonstrate our principles. Kira snorted. Good luck with that. We're 2 years into a war that's forced us to compromise half our principles already. Section 31 operates with impunity. We've allied with the Romulans despite their history of betrayal, and we're asking the UNSC to help us fight while simultaneously judging them for how they survived their own war. We're not exactly the moral exemplars we pretend to be. It was a harsh assessment, but not inaccurate. The Dominion War had forced the Federation to confront its own contradictions. Principles that worked in peacetime became liabilities in existential conflict. Then maybe, Sisko said thoughtfully, the UNSC is exactly what we need. Not as soldiers or weapons, but as mirrors reflecting what we might become if we continue down this path. They're humanity that chose survival over principles. We're humanity that chose principles and hoping survival follows. Maybe both approaches have value. Or maybe, Dax suggested with the wisdom of 3 centuries, the real answer is somewhere between the two extremes. The UNSC survives through pragmatism. The Federation thrives through idealism. Together, you might balance each other. Sisko hoped she was right. Because across the quadrant, in the Gamma Quadrant's heart, the founders were analyzing the battle's implications. The UNSC had demonstrated capability to defeat the Borg, an enemy that had humiliated every major Alpha Quadrant power. That made them either valuable assets or existential threats. The Dominion would make their own calculations. And when they did, the UNSC would face a choice that would define their existence in this reality: adaptation or extinction, alliance or isolation, survival or principle. In the wardroom, the Master Chief stood alone, looking at the memorial wall where names of Infinity's dead were being inscribed. 143 names. 143 lives sacrificed so that 17,000 could survive. It was the mathematics of war. Cold, brutal, necessary. But mathematics didn't account for grief. For the weight of survival when others didn't. For the question every soldier eventually asked themselves, why did I live when they died? The chief had no answer. He'd survived countless battles, lost countless comrades, and carried countless names in his memory. The Infinity's dead would join them, honored, remembered, and ultimately mourned in the private spaces where Spartans processed emotions they were trained to suppress. Chief. Palmer's voice broke his reverie. Memorial service in 30 minutes. Captain Lasky wants all surviving Spartans present. Understood. The chief turned from the wall. Commander, what's your assessment? Can the UNSC survive in this reality? Palmer considered carefully. We've survived worse. The Covenant nearly exterminated us. We rebuilt. The Infinity was destroyed. We'll adapt. The question isn't whether we can survive, it's what we're willing to become in order to do it. And the answer? "Whatever's necessary," Palmer said firmly. "Because that's what Spartans do. We adapt, we overcome, and we finish the fight. No matter what universe we're fighting in." The chief nodded once, acknowledgement, agreement, and commitment combined in a single gesture. Then together, they walked toward the memorial service, where 17,000 UNSC personnel would honor their dead and begin planning their future in a galaxy that would never be quite the same. Because the United Nations Space Command had arrived in the Star Trek universe. And neither reality would ever forget it. The UNSC's arrival in the Star Trek universe represented more than a spatial anomaly or dimensional accident. It was a collision of philosophies, survival-driven militarism meeting exploration-focused idealism, pragmatic doctrine confronting principled diplomacy. The Infinity's destruction had saved Deep Space Nine and defeated the Borg, but it had also left 17,000 displaced soldiers searching for purpose in someone else's war. Captain Lasky faced impossible choices: ally with the Federation and risk compromising UNSC independence, accept Klingon partnership and embrace perpetual warfare, trust Romulan promises despite obvious manipulation, or reject all offers and forge an isolated path. Each option carried consequences that would ripple across both realities. The Master Chief, humanity's greatest warrior, found himself navigating diplomacy more complex than any battlefield. His conversation with Remediclan had planted seeds of doubt in Jem'Hadar doctrine, subtle, dangerous, potentially revolutionary. The Dominion would eventually respond, and that response would test whether the UNSC's principles could survive contact with totalitarian pragmatism. Deep Space Nine had become the nexus where multiple versions of humanity's future converged. The Federation represented humanity evolved beyond conflict. The UNSC represented humanity forged through extinction-level warfare. Together, they would either find synthesis or discover that some philosophical gaps couldn't be bridged. And across the quadrant, in spaces between stars where sensors couldn't reach, other powers watched and calculated. The Borg Collective analyzed the tactical data from their destroyed cube, already adapting strategies for the next encounter. The founders debated whether the UNSC represented alliance opportunity or existential threat. The Romulans plotted acquisition strategies. The Klingon composed songs of glorious sacrifice. The UNSC Infinity was gone, but its legacy had just begun. 17,000 soldiers without a ship, without a mission, without a clear path home. But with something more valuable than any of those: purpose. Because wherever they were, whatever reality they inhabited, the UNSC's mission remained unchanged: protect humanity, finish the fight, and never surrender to enemies who claimed superiority through genetics, technology, or divine right. The war with the Dominion continued. The threat from the Borg remained. And somewhere in the Bajoran wormhole's quantum fluctuations, the possibility of home waited, distant, uncertain, but not impossible. The UNSC had survived 30 years of genocidal warfare with the Covenant. They would survive this too. Because that's what humanity did, in every reality, across every dimension: adapt, overcome, and prove that no enemy, no matter how powerful, how advanced, or how inevitable, could extinguish the simple human refusal to accept extinction. Live long and prosper. And finish the fight. Live long and prosper. Hit the subscribe button for more interesting stories.